Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto and Hinata left dead by his teammates part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Our hero Naruto is walking down the streets of Konoha wondering about the many different flavors of ramen. Ramen is so sugoi. I can't wait to get to Ichiraku's and eat a 100 bowls. With that he runs the rest of the way to the store. That damn Kyuubi demon boy is so annoying. We should do the world a favor and finish what the fourth Hokage started 13 years ago. A bald villager said to his partner next to him. Later that night as Naruto was leaving the ramen stand, he noticed how dark it was. Oh shit, I lost track of time. I have to get ready for the Genin test tomorrow. I need to get home and sleep off all that delicious ramen. As he runs towards his house, he doesn't sense a small pale-eyed girl with beautiful lavender hair watching him from afar. She chases him from a distance. She knows he won't sense her. However, she stops as she notices people waiting for the blonde at his apartment. What's going on? Who are all those people at Naruto-kun's apartment? When the blonde reached his home, he was worried when he saw the door already kicked in. His heart beat rapidly in his chest as he pushed the door open. Mashi mashi. Instead of an answer, Naruto's world was filled with pain and stars. He felt himself fall on his stomach and the taste of his wood floor. Welcome home, demon. And pretty soon you'll be welcomed into hell. Someone said. Naruto was too disoriented to see who said what. Before he could get his bearings, blows began to rain down on him from everywhere. Wait. Not here, let's take out the trash where no one will find him. Naruto had blacked out a bit through the beating. When he came to, he felt himself in ankle-deep water. The sewer. I haven't been in Konoha's sewer for years now. How do I get out? He began to walk along the dark and murky corridors, slowly understanding that he wasn't in Konoha. There were symbols about that he didn't understand. He knew they had something to do with sealing, and they lit the halls ever so faintly. As he progressed through the sewers, a heavy pressure began to fall over him. He sucked up his fear for the sake of finding a way out of wherever he was. His walk led him to a massive set of bars with a paper seal on them. The heavy pressure was coming through the bars. Naruto stood in awe and fear, sweating. Well, my container finally graces little old me with his presence. I should be so humbled, should I not? Who are you? The deep voice chuckled. Not who. What? A pair of large glowing red eyes opened in the darkness, glowing sinisterly. The figure moved forward into the light, revealing giant fox with rabbit-like ears and red fur. Its flowing 9 tails swayed hypnotically behind it. The Kyuubi. You're the Kyuubi. But how? You're not as dumb as you look, ninja. The Kyuubi chuckled again. As for how, I was sealed inside of you on the day of your birth. Sealed in me? But why? And how? The fourth Hokage killed you, didn't he? Of course not. Your father did not have the means of destroying a chakra-based spirit such as myself. Only the true Shinigami or my father, the sage of the 6 paths, could do such a thing. And yes, your father is the fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze. Your mother was a loud-mouthed redhead by the name of Kushina Uzumaki, the red-hot habanero. Wait. The fourth Hokage was my father. And how would you know my mother? What the fuck is a sage of the 6 paths? Naruto rushed towards the bars and yelled at the Kyuubi. Instead of attacking like it thought about, however, it looked at Naruto's tear-stained cheeks and sighed. I was sealed inside of your mother, and before her, Mito Uzumaki, the wife of the Shodaime Hokage Hashirama Senju. I have known about you before you were even born, kid. You are a Jinchuriki, just as your mother. That explains why the villagers hate me. They think I'm you. I guess I really am a demon. The Kyuubi roared, making Naruto fall on his butt. Do not think yourself a demon when the true demons are those that treat a child as a plague. Those disgusting pieces of filth are far worse than anything I have ever done. You are innocent child. Naruto couldn't help but laugh. Well, I guess you aren't as bad as they say. I'm sorry you're sealed in me if that's the case, Kyuubi-san. The Kyuubi was surprised that Naruto apologized for its sealing. Even Mito and Kushina never apologized. They weren't mean or anything, but they always felt it was natural for the Bijuu to be sealed. You're a strange one, kid. Anyway, I would like to see how strange you are, but there's an urgent matter at hand. You're dying. What? I'm dying. How? Why? Stop your yelling, damn brat. The Kyuubi roared again, pushing the blonde onto his butt again and leaving him grumbling. You were attacked in your home. Well, you were wandering around trying to find me. The bastards that have you took you into the woods and have been mercilessly beating on your body. You have multiple broken bones, a concussion, one of them took your eyes out and another gave you an impromptu vasectomy. I've been trying to heal you as much as I can, but it may not be enough as is. What the fuck? I didn't do anything. I know, kid. But it gets worse. Someone else is hurt for trying to protect you. Outside, the pale-eyed princess known as Hinata was shocked when she saw her secret crush get knocked out by someone in his home. She was so startled that she could do nothing but gasp and hold in tears as they picked up the blonde and rushed off into the forest outskirts of the village. No. Naruto-kun. What are they doing? It took a while before she came back to her senses enough to rush after them. She didn't think of going to get help, only hoping to stop the kidnappers from getting away with her future lover. She finally caught up to them in a clearing and could not hold back her tears as she saw them tie the blonde to a boulder before taking turns beating and stabbing him. Blood poured from his wounds, creating a growing pool of crimson on the ground around the boulder. The sloshing sound of the wetness pervading the grass as at least 8 people walked back and forth, even dancing in it, snapped something in the Hyuga princess. With a howl of rage, Hinata darted into the clearing and thrust her hand so hard at the back of one of the offenders, his heart burst from the front of his chest and smashed to pieces against the same rock Naruto was tied to. Upon closer look, Hinata saw that all of Naruto's fingers were cut off and his eyes were missing. Naruto-kun, my poor sweet Naruto-kun, what have they done? As she reached for his body, the remaining villagers shook off their stupor of having one of their own killed. You little bitch. A harsh backhand sent Hinata smashing into the side of the boulder as well. Her body fell into the pooling blood of the blonde Jinchuriki. She was dazed, seeing stars. That little demon slut killed Hashima. We need to make her pay too. Wait, isn't she the Hyuga clan heiress though? Another asked. Who cares? I heard she's a disappointment to her family and even was disowned by her father for losing to her sister so much. They'll thank us for getting rid of this demon fucking cunt. 2 of the villagers began to dedicate themselves to beating and stabbing the prone form of the Hyuga heiress. It was only by a miracle that she didn't succumb to her injuries immediately. Naruto-kun were her last thoughts before she passed out from blood loss. Mindscape, Hinata tried to save me. Why would she? Naruto was confused. He barely noticed the shy girl in class. He only paid attention to her sometimes because she was one of the best kunoichi in the class grade-wise. He admitted that she was cute just like Sakura and Ino, but she never stood out to him. That should be obvious, kid. She loves you. Has for a long time. But now's not the time. If you want to find out why she loves a knucklehead like you, we have to do something drastic or you both will die. Naruto's panicked face steeled into determination. I will save Hinata-chan. I can't let her die knowing she was protecting me from those villagers. What do we have to do, Kyuubi-san? Kyuubi was proud of Naruto's resolve. For the record, kid, my name is Kurama. No more Kyuubi-san shit. And what we're going to do is shove as much of chakra into your body as I can. The process could possibly kill you, but if we don't try this you're going to die anyway. Then what are we waiting for, Kurama-san? Let's do this. Kurama bristled at the Kurama-san but prepared itself anyway. Alright kid, come over here and place your hand on that seal. I don't know what will happen if this works, but you'll definitely be able to save your mate. By what? No time, right? Naruto ran up and placed his hand on the seal. Kurama took a deep breath before slamming all 9 of its tails into the bars right behind the seal. Immediately, a blast of chakra exploded from Kurama. However, a vacuum effect prevented both Naruto and Kurama from being blown away and instead kept them rooted as Kurama's chakra began to siphon itself forcefully into Naruto's body. Fuck, this hurts. Naruto screamed. Tell me about it. Kurama screamed back. After a few seconds of shock waves flashing out around them before forcefully being pulled back to the seal and into Naruto, the two were blasted away from each other. Naruto hit the wall of the sewers while Kurama was thrown into the murky darkness of its cage, preventing Naruto from knowing what became of the Biju. When Naruto opened his eyes, his entire body was glowing white with a red outline. It was as if he were made of light and he could feel unimaginable power coursing through his body. Kurama-san, you okay? He called, forgetting all about himself and only worried for his new friend. Forget me, kid. Wake up and save Hinata-chan. Kurama's voice sounded different, but Naruto didn't dwell on it as he realized he needed to wake up and save Hinata. You're right. I'm going then. Outside, the villagers were just about done killing the demon and his little demon-loving whore. They stood back and took in their handiwork. Well fuck. Looks like we just saved the world. One called. Yep. Too bad none of us thought about fucking the demon bitch before we killed her. Says you. I'll still have a go at the body before it gets cold. The woman scoffed. That's sick. She was a demon slut. You might get demon herpes or something. As the last 7 alive began to laugh, a heavy pressure took the air right from their lungs. The chains that bound Naruto's body to the stone shattered. His body fell forward into the pooled blood beneath him. What's happening? The demon is dead, right? One of the villagers was able to gasp out before being forced to his knees from the growing pressure. The others followed suit before they were made to kiss the ground from the pressure, their bones creaking under the heavy weight. Oh no, you demons will die soon though. Naruto's voice echoed around them. They strained themselves to watch in horror as Naruto's wound began to hiss as if being burned. Bones erupted from where his fingers used to be before tendrils of blood and muscle began to wrap the appendages. The sound of his bones snapping back into place filled the clearing. He began to stand, the blood on the ground around him rising alongside him, almost as if the strings of some marionette. His twisted neck snapped itself back into place, and his hair grew until it rested just past his shoulders. When he opened his eyes, they were reformed. However, they were shining gold, almost like the sun. Black rings circled his iris, as well as 3 burning red tama like a Sharingan. The whisker marks on his cheek bleed before the blood turned into a red light, making his face glow. His jack tore to shreds, leaving him shirtless. Markings began to form over his body like tribal lines, all glowing the same crimson as his whiskers. The Shinku Arashi, Crimson Storm, was born. Why, you truly are a demon. The lone female villager called through the dirt and grass. Me a demon? When you had the gall to beat and torture a barely legal child to death. For no other reason than to sate a 13-year vengeance that I had nothing to do with. Even worse, Hinata-chan. His anger subsided momentarily as he rushed over the downed Hyuga princess. One of her eyes were also missing, yet the other was open. She stared lifelessly towards the moon, her once beautiful pale eye now nothing but a hazy unmoving orb. Hinata-chan, you silly girl, why did you try to save me? Tears leaked from Naruto's eyes as a golden droplets. They fell to Hinata's face and healed the few scratches that sat upon her, yet they did nothing to stir her from her eternal rest. Hit bite her. Infuse the chakra you are using into her, now. Kurama's voice jolted Naruto from his mourning. He was confused for only a moment before forsaking reasons and simply sinking his teeth into Hinata's neck. He subconsciously released chakra from his fangs into the princess's corpse. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. However, soon enough life returned to her single eye and her body arched with a gasp. Crimson chakra exploded from her body before turning gold and finally pure white. Her jacket and undershirt were blown away as well, barring her budding C-cup chest to the world. She howled in pain as her missing eye began to reform. The veins around her eyes bulged as her Byakugan activated. Soon enough, her eyes began to glow with a tint of lavender and a pattern of flowers appeared in her eyes. The flower pattern seemed to constantly swirl about and a white mist began to leak from the corner of her eyes. Just as with Naruto, markings began to appear over her torso, making intricate tribal-like patterns that pulsated and glowed with a shining white light. Her hair grew to shoulder length, just a tad bit shorter than Naruto's. Naruto stood back and watched in awe as the princess floated off the ground, a whipping wind dying down to signify her transformation was done. When her feet touched the ground, she took in a deep breath before opening her shining eyes. Naruto could only look at what could be described as Atsuki Hime. Moon Princess. Hinata-chan. His voice called out to her. She slowly turned to face him. Yes, Naruto-kun. You saved me. Arigato. Her voice was angelic, yet with a cold tone that matched Naruto's underlying rage-filled tone. Fire and ice, ready to catch all in a crossfire. Thank Kami. Naruto said as he took her hand in his own. A small smirk found its way onto Hinata's serene face at the gesture, and she squeezed it slightly. Naruto returned the smirk before it fell into a scowl at the sound of the villagers finally returning to their feet. Apparently the pressure they were giving had faded as they interacted with each other. You fucking demons. You came back to life. The villagers were still terrified as even though they were able to stand, waves of energy were still rolling off the two that made the Kyuubi seem like a genin. You call us demons again, yet you are wrong. We are so much more. Naruto began, however. Hinata placed a hand on his chest. Naruto-kun, don't waste words on this filth. Come, let us punish them for the grievous crime of murdering us. The cold tone of Hinata's words actually caused frost to appear in the air around them. A dark smile graced Naruto's shining face. The villagers now understood that they were absolutely fucked. With a clap of his hands, a red barrier formed around the clearing, not passing the tops of the trees, but creating a dome nonetheless. Now they won't hear you scream. In the blink of an eye, Naruto and Hinata stood before two of the villagers with their hands sticking out of their backs, their beating hearts within their grasp. The two men looked at the shining eyes of their murderers before looking down at the appendages sticking through them. They simultaneously coughed up blood before slumping dead. The remaining offenders all screamed and ran towards the barrier, clawing at it until their nails ripped off and their fingers bled. Naruto held a hand forward and a red chakra hand flew out. He grabbed one of the villagers before slinging him overhead and slamming him into the ground. He repeated the process several times, each time staining the ground with splatters of blood and dismembered body parts, before using the hand to smash what remained of the man into the barrier surrounding the clearing. He ground the body against a barrier as one would a bug on a window. When the chakra hand dissipated, all that was left of the man was a fine paste of blood. Kami-sama, help us. A villager cried and lost control of his bowels, filling the air with a putrid stink. Hinata appeared in front of the villager that cried out and gripped him by his throat, lifting him into the air despite the size difference. She held out her free hand, making a glowing blade of light appear. She shoved the blade into his gut, where the blade sizzled as if it were made of molten steel. The villager's scream rang out louder than any sound any of them had heard before. Hinata slowly began to twist the blade, making boiling blood spill from the entry wound and also to surge up the man's throat. Then she swiftly drew the blade down, cutting and burning the man's off and nearly bisecting him. His entrails and organs spilled out, his arms falling limp as he died swiftly. Hinata tossed the body away where it fell into crumpled lump of flesh. "Please," the lone woman called out. "Please, spare us. We're sorry. We shouldn't have angered you." "Angered us?" Naruto chuckled. "You fucking murdered us." With smiles on your faces. His rage made the red lines about his body burn brightly. However, a cool hand on his shoulder in the form of Hinata calmed him almost immediately. "Be calm, Naruto-kun. Remember, this filth deserves no words. Yes. Just as they deserve no mercy." The last villagers could only lose their own bowels as the glowing eyes of their assailants shined brighter. Naruto rose his right hand to his side as Hinata rose her left. A red chakra arm expanded from Naruto, while a white chakra arm was Hinata's. Together they swung the arms forward, smashing the remaining villagers between their palms and splashing gore into the air. But the deed done, the barrier fell. The glow about the teen's body fell, their eyes fading back to their original colors. Before either could move, a surge of Naso hit them both, making them fall to their knees and vomit blood. "Hi Hinata-chan." Naruto whispered. Hinata could only look into his eyes before she collapsed. "Naruto-kun," she whispered as she fell unconscious. The blonde Jinchuriki followed soon after. The feeling of slushing water at his back awoke him. He groaned as the dim light was still bright enough to blind him momentarily. "The sewers again. Does this mean I'm near Kurama-san?" When his eyes fully adjusted to the light he saw the Kyuubi cell right in front of him. He could sense Kurama somewhere in the darkness, but it was far more faint than their first meeting. "Kurama-san? Are you in there?" "Yes kid, and stop it with the san shit already." Naruto's eyes widened as he finally recognized what was different about Kurama's voice. "You sound like a girl." "That's because I am a girl Gaki." The shout was followed by a small figure leaping from the darkness and smacking the bars of the cage with a bang. Unlike before, Naruto wasn't fazed in the least by the person before him. Yes, person. Standing on the other side of the bars was a small girl, seeming only about 4 feet tall to Naruto's own diminutive 4'9". Her dark skin was a delicious-looking brown that glistened with specks of sweat as if she had just been working out. Her thighs were thicker than what seemed normal for a person that small, and her hips made Naruto's mouth dry. Her glowing red eyes and crimson hair, stylized in a high-sitting ponytail that split into 3 strands, was the only way Naruto knew the person was indeed Kurama. The last thing he noticed that caused his mind to falter were her cup and lightly trimmed, she was completely naked. "That a good look kid." Her voice was almost childlike, just as her stature, though one could see she most certainly was not a child by her hips, thighs, and red pubic hair. She still radiated a massive aura of power as well, though it was nowhere near as much as before. "Why the hell are you a naked loli?" Naruto flailed a pointing finger even as blood leaked from his nose. Kurama folded her arms and puffed her cheeks, a large blush staining her face. "It's not like I intentionally took this form. I lost most of my power saving your sorry ass, and this is what happened." She suddenly turned from Naruto with a storm cloud over her. "I'm as weak as the Sanbi now." "The Sanbi? Chime would never let me live this down." "Boy, the hell are you going on about? This is your fault." The naked loli ran through the bars and tackled Naruto. As she began shaking him, making his eyes swirls, she noticed that she was indeed on the other side of the bars. "Huh?" she inquired as she looked back and forth between the cell she had escaped and the boy beneath her trying to regain his bearings. Suddenly, her hair shadowed her eyes and a heavy pressure began to build. "Are you telling me I could have walked out of there at any time? I could have explored this place. 13 fucking years and I never tried." Her thoughts were interrupted as she felt something poking at her backside. Looking down, she noticed a not so subtle tint in the Uzumaki's pants, rubbing against the meat of her bottom. Looking into his face she found the boy somewhat lost in a haze of undeniable lust. A small blush appeared on her own face as well before she rocketed back into the confines of her cage. "Hentai? Eki? Lolican?" she cried, trying to hide herself. What? You're the pervert that jumped on top of me butt naked." Naruto cried back, holding his nose from exploding with more blood. "Urusai?" Kurama rocketed forward again and tried to kick Naruto in his face. However, he subconsciously ducked the kick, grabbed her leg, and slammed into the ground on her stomach before placing a knee to her back. The two were shocked into a momentarily silence before Naruto got off the smaller girl. She turned to look up at him with small tears in her eyes. "How did I?" Naruto started. However, Kurama kicked him in the balls for good measure. "But why?" He groaned and fell to the ground. "Serves you right." She stuck her tongue out at him. When he was fully recovered, he sat with Kurama in front of her cage. The sad look on her face let him know she was thinking about the previous night just like him. "There's so much we need to discuss," he started. Kurama solemnly nodded. What happened last night? I barely remember anything after you gave me your chakra. Honestly, Naruto, I don't think much of that was my chakra. At most, the chakra that I gave up boosted your healing. It took at least 5 tails of my chakra to replenish you just enough to not die. Whatever happened, it wasn't entirely me. Naruto's eyes widened. He contemplated what she meant for a moment before realizing his mind felt more clear. He was more calm than he generally would be in a moment like that. However, that calm didn't last as he remembered what happened beforehand. His anger began to boil faster than it used to. Then Naruto. Calm down. Kurama's voice snapped him from his musings. He noticed she was clinging to a bar of the cell. He was going to question why until he noticed the water all around him boiling. Your anger is affecting even here now. Such rage is even more powerful than the hatred I can produce. How? I wasn't trying to get angry, it could just be your new abilities. New abilities? He echoed. She nodded and dropped back down into the water. Do you remember what happened? She inquired. Naruto tried to think, but for the life of him, he couldn't exactly remember what happened after he woke up to find Hinata-chan. What happened to her? He jumped to his feet and grabbed Kurama by her shoulders. She frowned at the action but didn't push him away. She's fine at least, I think. You saved her. Naruto, don't you remember what you and her did to the villagers? The cold sweat broke out on his face. He could only see bits and pieces. Biting Hinata. Making chakra claws. But the blood. His eyes dilated as he remembered so much blood. Everywhere. Hey Kurama, did I kill them? Naruto's eyes watered as the images of the night finally began to show clearly to him. Before she could even answer, tears began to flow from his eyes. He fell to his knees, but Kurama caught him before he could fall over entirely. She hugged his head to her stomach but said nothing. After a moment of simply holding his trembling body, Kurama bit back her own tears as she wanted to weep for such a loss of innocence. Yes, Naruto-kun, she whispered. At that moment Naruto's dam broke. He wrapped his arms around Kurama's waist and howled into her embrace. Meanwhile, Hiruzen Sarutobi knew he had been too old for this job. Being Hokage twice, for well over 3 decades at this point, made him believe he had seen almost everything. However, each new generation seemed to take pleasure in taking what he knew as the professor and repeatedly kick it in the balls until asking, now what did you learn? Last night had been one of the scariest nights of his life. While winding down after finishing most of his paperwork for the day, he received a surprise visit from a Hyuga branch member. The person was in a panic, saying that they had been tasked with watching the eldest Hyuga heiress and had lost her a while ago. After fruitlessly searching for her, with the girl somehow even eluding his Byakugan, he decided to enlist the help of the Hokage. He knew going to Hiashi would be tantamount to suicide for losing an unbranded Hyuga. The Hokage wanted to question why losing an unbranded Hyuga seemed more important than losing the heiress and daughter of said clan, yet the branch members simply looked away in shame, almost as if giving the answer would dishonor his entire family. Either way, the Hokage used his crystal ball to attempt to locate the girl. Since she wasn't someone he particularly kept a close eye on, it took a while to find her. However, the scene caused him and the branch member to both pale in horror. Alongside the Hyuga heiress, his pseudo-grandson Naruto were for all intents and purposes being mutilated by several villagers in a clearing near the outskirts of the village. The brutality of the scene was enough to give both shinobi pause, the third having never seen something so gruesome from anyone under special jonin. Yet here were several civilians performing such perverse acts of cruelty on 2 barely legal, not even genin yet, children. It took a few more moments for the Hokage to immediately call his personal Anbu squad before they began to rush for the clearing. The last thing he saw on his crystal ball were both children seeming to die. By the time the Hokage reached the clearing with his team, however, a barrier had seemed to be constructed. Nothing he nor his Anbu did made the barrier falter in the slightest. But just as soon as they tried, the barrier seemed to fall. The scene was horrific. One of the Anbu lost their lunch as even the Hokage himself had to hold back his gag reflexes at the absolute view of bloody carnage that awaited him. Body parts, piss, shit, guts, internal organs. It was a macabre of death. His eyes scanned over the scene until he found the 2 teens, both half-naked and laying in pools of blood and vomit. To his relief, they were both alive, albeit barely. Their bodies were bruised, but he was sure they had both been missing their eyes and smaller ligaments. That also brought to question what exactly happened in that clearing that they couldn't see. Who had erected the barrier? The most logical answer would have been Naruto losing control of the Kyuubi. Kami knows that amount of death and destruction would be oh so easy for the strongest of the Biju. Yet, even before the barrier had been erected, he didn't feel any of the malicious aura that the Kyuubi was known for. Also, it wouldn't explain the barrier. Instead of dwelling on the matter for too long whilst he didn't know if the teens were still in danger, he ordered his Anbu to take them to the hospital, as well as to watch over them 24/7 until they awoke. A few hours later a doctor alerted Sarutobi that the children were lucky to be alive. As far as he could tell, it was as if something or someone had rapidly healed the children of all of their previous injuries, even going so far as to regenerate their eyes, something that should have been impossible. The doctor said it couldn't have been the Kyuubi because the same signs of regeneration were on the Hyuga heiress. It brought more questions to the wizened old man. He wasn't sure his metaphorical could take more kicks. Okajima, I came as soon as I heard. The third turned to face a stoic Hiashi Hyuga. His tone of voice told him he didn't come as soon as he heard. That's concerning then, Hiashi-san, seeing as I sent an Anbu to tell you of your daughter's condition an hour ago. If the comment bothered him, it didn't show. Hiashi simply shook his head before looking into the intensive care room where his daughter lay. Unfortunately, being clan head leaves little time to simply brush off matters for other trivial things. Trivial? The health and safety of your daughter is trivial. The Hokage held in his anger. It wouldn't do to have the leader of the village attacking one of his charges over simple words. She is alive, is she not? And as I understand, her condition was done at the hands of civilian. Not even shinobi trained. It proves even more how much of a failure she is. As my father has suggested as well, it would be fit to simply allow Kurenai-san to adopt her as intended and be rid of this obvious weakness to our clan. The wave of Kai filled the hall for all but a moment, however, Hiashi took a step back in fear either way. Looking at his leader yielded an audible gulp from the Hyuga leader. He had never seen such righteous fury on the face of his leader since Orochimaru had abandoned the village 10 years ago. The Hokage on his part simply took a deep breath and exhaled loudly. When he turned to face Hiashi, his face was neutral, yet his eyes showed a debilitating cold that promised pain if the man spoke another word without permission. I assume since you are to allow Kurenai-chan to adopt young Hinata, you already have such papers written up. Hiashi was confused on what the Hokage was getting at but nodded anyway, not really trusting his voice at the moment. The Hokage himself made a motion where a Nico mask Anbu appeared kneeling next to him. Hi Hokage-sama. The female Anbu inquired. Bring me Kurenai Yuhi immediately. By force if you must within the next 5 minutes. Hi Hokage-sama. The Anbu vanished in a swirl of leaves. A third turned his gaze back to Hiashi. I expect those papers to be in my hand before Nico returns with Kurenai-san Hiashi. This is not up for debate and failure to do so will result in me questioning your loyalties to the village if the state of your daughter doesn't even bring an ounce of feeling from you. I'm sure Ibiki would love to see just how unfeeling you truly are to the plight of not only your family but the safety of our men and women in the village as well. Hiashi paled. It was one thing to disregard people within his clan. However, seeing as Hinata was attacked outside of the clan walls, it could be brought up in a civilian court by the families of the deceased. Meaning he would not get final say in whatever issues arose with the current problem. He vanished just as fast as Nico. Naruto my boy Hinata you sweet child forgive this old man for his shortcomings. I promise you both, I will no longer turn a blind eye to your treatment either of you. Mindscape Naruto-kun, wake up. Kurama's voice and light shaking awoke him. What happened? He mumbled and rubbed his eyes, taking in the pitch blackness around him. Wait, pitch blackness. Naruto-kun, you have to get up. I don't know where we are. His eyes snapped open all the way and sure enough, all around him was an eternal darkness. The naked form of Kurama clung to him as they sat on the ground with his head resting on her thighs until he sat up. Where are we? I just said I don't know Baka. Fuck you're stupid. Yeah, well, and you're a lowly minority. The fuck does that mean? Kurama stood and smashed her foot into Naruto's face, pushing his head into the ground. Ah, how amusing. A sensual voice echoed throughout the darkness. Naruto and Kurama immediately squeaked and held on to each other as a chill shot through them both like an arrow. Kurama-chan, what's that? I'm happy you called me Kurama-chan, but I have no idea. You're welcome, but if you don't know what that is, we're probably going to die right. I'd happily die with you knowing that I'm your Kurama-chan, and yes, we're probably going to die. You should both work on your comedy skit. And for all intents and purposes, Ami wa Mushinderu. You're already dead. Nani? Both Naruto and Kurama shouted at the same time. Before anything else could happen, a blinding light lit the darkness from behind the two. They turned to see a rain of feathers bleeding into the darkness around them. For fuck's sake sis, you're early. The voice from before shouted out, losing its sensual undertone. Oh? Sorry, I thought you'd be done by now. A tender voice called from the shining light. As they saw, black feathers began to bleed into the white now. I haven't even introduced myself yet. And where is your charge? Right here silly. One of the white feathers drifted towards Naruto and Kurama before touching the area next to them. It burst into a small body before the light faded to show it was Hinata. The young Hyuga began to wake up immediately. Hinata-chan. Naruto cried and instantly scooped the girl into a hug. Beep. The girl's eyes shot open and her face lit the black and white world up with an intense red glow. The two voices chuckled at the scene as Hinata did her best not to pass out and subconsciously hugged the blonde back. maybe not so subconsciously rubbing her hands up and down Naruto's bare torso. Not to break up the happy reunion or anything, but can someone explain what the fuck is going on here? Kurama shouted, making Naruto and Hinata leap apart. Lucky for the Hyuga heiress, Naruto hadn't known that she was still topless as well. Then again, she didn't notice either. As you wish. Both ethereal voices called together. In the next instant, the black and white voids began to swirl into two singular points around the trio. As the blackness pulled away, it began to reveal an icy ground with flakes of snow. The sound of water rushing began to grow. As the whiteness pulled away, birds chirping could be heard and lush greenery and foliage. When the voids were gone, being two human-sized pillars of black and white, the trio were between a snow-covered lake in the middle of a frozen forest and a beautiful meadow with a stream flowing through it, the sun shining brightly above head and animals frolicking. The black pillar burst to reveal a beautiful woman with pale gray skin and hair so black it was as if the void they had been in. Her hair fell down to her calves and covered her left eye. Her right eye was a shining crimson. The woman stood topless, her DD-sized chest on full display, yet a black silk-like sash wrapped her arms, legs, and waist. A simple G-string covered her modesty barely with two skull clips, holding the tiny piece of fabric at her waist. The white pillar burst to reveal another equally beautiful woman with creamy tan skin and hair as white as the clouds in the sky. Her hair was set in the exact same style and length as her counterpart but covered her right eye instead of her left. She had the same DD-sized chest as her counterpart as well, also on full display to the world. The same sashes covered her arms, legs, and waist, yet a somewhat more modest pair of golden panties covered her bottom. It wasn't any less tantalizing. While the dark-haired figure held a playful, somewhat cocky smirk, the white-haired beauty stood with her one visible eye closed and a warm and kind smile. "Sup Gakkus. My name is Shiki, and that ball of sexual tension is my twin sister Hikari." The dark-haired Shiki held a hand on her hip and her smirk became sinister. "But we're more commonly known as the Shinigami and Kami-sama. Pleasure to meet you all," Hikari called with a bow. There was a long pause in the air as the duo awaited the trio's response. Thud. The twin sisters looked with concern as all three fainted. "Ara? Was it something we said? Maybe we should have eased into the introductions." Hikari snapped a finger and made an orb of water fall over the downed trio. They woke with sputters before their situation dawned on them again and left them staring at the two beauties in awe. "You three gonna pick your jaws off the ground so we can discuss why you're here?" Shiki crossed her arms and giggled at the three when sheepish blushes appeared on their faces. "So, you're Shinigami-sama. Does that mean we're really dead?" Hinata asked, tears forming in her eyes more so for Naruto and the fact that she was leaving Hanabi behind. "Technically, death doesn't mean as much to you three anymore. So yes and no. You're both dead and alive." Question marks popped up over their heads. "Nah, Shiki-chan, we shouldn't confuse them like this. Let's just explain what happened to them from the beginning." Shiki sighed. "Why did mortals always have to be so complicated? Alright then. Listen up, cause I hate repeating myself." The trio were all ears. "You two," she started, pointing at Hinata and Naruto. "Died a very horrendous and painful death, courtesy of moi." She indicated herself. "By extension, you," she pointed to Naruto once more. "Drug her lowly ass with you to the grave." She pointed to Kurama. "Hey. She's not wrong Kurama-chan." Naruto called, earning him a knuckle to the back of the head. What do you mean Shinigami-sama? You made me and Naruto-kun die?" Hinata asked innocently. Part of her was sad someone would wish such a horrific thing on her and her soon-to-be lover. However, another part of her was pissed someone would have the gall to do it to them in the first place. Her own anger startled her a bit. "Unfortunately, yes. I had to have you two die a horrific death for what me and sis had planned. We were going to give you both wonderful gifts before having Kurama-chan bring you back to life. But things went a little out of control." Hikari's pout was so cute, Naruto and Kurama had to check their eyes to make sure she wasn't a clone of Hinata. Kurama jumped the fucking gun. Shiki roared, making all three younger beings huddle together. Seeing their fear, she scratched her cheek with a slight blush. "Sorry. I just got a little agitated. Anyway, I needed you two to rack up as much karma as you could in the form of an unjustified death. It was the only way me and sis would be able to pull you to us instead of having you go straight through purgatory and then into the afterlife. It's a stupid archaic system that we're really just too lazy to update." Naruto rose a hand. Shiki acknowledged him with a mildly confused look. "We still have no clue what's going on here." Hinata and Kurama nodded their agreement. Shiki face planted while Hikari sweat dropped. "Ara. Maybe I can shed a bit more light on this." A light pun. Really. Not intended. "Now then, as my darling sister said, we had to arrange your deaths the way we did so we could personally meet you both. We have seen your futures and needless to say, you two have very large parts to play. Unfortunately, you both suck in so many ways that we thought some divine intervention needed to happen." A cold chill passed through them, including Shiki. She seems so sweet, the trio thought. The future we saw resulted in the deaths of almost every person on the planet, which in turn would cause more work for me and Sis. And seeing as we're on vacation for the next 34,000 years, we are not cutting it short. Beyond the workload, there would be too many lost souls to deal with due to untimely deaths. It would cause a backlash that could even affect timelines and dimensions outside of our jurisdiction. And it all boils down to the choices that you two specifically make. The world is literally on your shoulders. Along with multiple timelines and dimensions that even we may never see. Hikari called cheerfully. So the point is, I was going to bring you, Naruto, with me to meet your father. It's poker night, so I thought we'd have some fun. And I was going to let you have tea with me and your mother, Hinata-chan. And my mom drinks tea with Kami. Hinata was blown away by that revelation, more so than your decisions could cease all existence. It was exactly why they needed to get certain priorities straight. Boy. What about me? Kurama called with a huff. You could have joined us. You're part of this as well. The trio took in what they had been told so far. It wasn't easy to ignore that the future was riding on them, for whatever reason. They weren't entirely compelled to ask what the future was like either. Maybe the auras of the two gods before them prevented such questions from even arising. Ah no, Shinigami-sama, Kami-sama, how are we able to speak to you now? Hinata asked. Yeah, that's where things got fucked up. Shiki rubbed the back of her head. So as I was taking Naruto's soul, a certain Biju used just enough power to yank him right out of my hands. Shiki shot Kurama a deadly glare, making the small Biju cower behind Naruto. The same thing happened with Hinata-chan and me. I tried to pull her into the light, yet Naruto-kun's newfound power was more than enough to drag her away from me. The sad look once again made them look between Kami and Hinata. But instead of just yanking your souls away, you cut my hand, you little bastard. Shiki grabbed Naruto by the collar and showed the deep gash across her palm. It already seemed to be healing, but it was a pretty bad wound. In the process, my blood mixed with your soul, essentially making you a Shinigami. I'm a death god. Holy shit, that's awesome. Naruto held out a hand. Bankai. But nothing happened. Not that kin to Shinigami. Both Kurama and Shiki brought their knuckles down on Naruto's head. So, then that means Hinata started. Hikari nodded and showed the similar cut on her own hand. Hi. My blood made you into a Megami. Goddess. The Hyuga era stared at the true Kami in awe for several seconds before fainting on the spot. So what does that mean for me? Kurama asked the two. Seeing as you're a chakra-based spirit, not an actual demon, and your soul was linked to Naruto's, that makes you free. Naruto and Kurama's heart skipped beats simultaneously. See, come again. Kurama couldn't believe her ears. Though your soul still resides in Naruto, you can leave him at any time without repercussions to either of you. Once he died, the seal failed. And now that he is a Shinigami, he has a connection to the spirit realm that allows you to use his soul as an entry point to and from the real world. You'll be able to do the same with Hinata as well. It was Kurama's turn to faint. Naruto looked up at Shiki with a knowing glare. She blushed and chuckled sheepishly. You're doing that on purpose, aren't you? I plead the fifth. I don't think the American Constitution applies here or even exist for that matter. Once Kurama and Hinata were awakened, Shiki and Hikari allowed them to take in everything they had learned. So what were the abilities you were going to give us at first? Though he was happy with how things were turning out, he was interested in what powers he would have received and if he could still meet his father. You received them alongside your Shinigami power. We were going to give you both a new Taijutsu. Naruto, yours was a combination of the Rinne Sharingan and the chakra construction known to your clan. However, my powers mutated it into the Shimirigan. Death-gazing eye, all the abilities of the Rinne Sharingan, as well as being able to seal by looking. You can even create and destroy intangible things like Jinjutsu, make them real, and even manipulate spirits. There's probably more to it, but you'll have to figure that out on your own. Hinata-chan. I wanted you to receive the Tensugen, a wonderfully more powerful form of your Byakugan. But your wonderful soul mixed with my pure blood and evolved it into the Shintensu Byakugan. True resurrection, all-seeing eye, also all of the abilities of the Tensugen and Byakugan, but with the ability to return anyone from death, so long as you can see their spirit. You can also instill empathy into anyone by touch or gaze. Alas, there is more, but I am unable to discern how much. This is a lot to take in. Naruto was blown away. Despite not knowing what some of the jutsu were, hearing their names instantly instilled him with the knowledge of how to use them. There's just one catch to all this though, Shiki said seriously. Your bodies used up a great deal of power when you avenged yourselves. You two are still far more powerful than most, but you won't be able to use any of those abilities, or even most of your god abilities, until you not only recover what you lost, but train your bodies to be able to handle the power. Train our bodies to handle god abilities. Is that even possible? There's a history lesson on why that's possible, but we've been shoving so much exposition down the readers' throats, I think it's about time to move the story along. Agreed. Everyone chorused. But the snap of their fingers, Shiki and Hikari made the world around them burst in a wonderfully display of lights of all colors. A powerful wind seemed to blow into them momentarily before everything abruptly halted. They appeared in front of a huge castle that seemed twice as big as the entirety of Konoha itself. Behind them were a large set of golden gates. Wow. Are we in heaven? Naruto asked excitedly. Something like that. This is a resting point for spirits on their way to harmony, or heaven like you just said. Harmony is a world for spirits to live out their afterlives in moderate peace. Moderate? Kurama inquired. Shiki nodded. Despite popular belief, the afterlife isn't as different from the physical world as you would believe. There are still disputes here or there, but the drama is kept to a minimum. At least, in harmony and the lands between. In discord or hell as you know it, all the shit stains of the physical world get left to their own devices. I'm in charge of making sure they remember exactly who the fuck runs the damn place. But if you're on vacation, who's watching Discord? Phil. He's the Shinigami avatar that ate your dad's soul. He's a great guy. Needs to get out more though. This way everyone. I'm sure our guests are eager to meet you all. Hikari suddenly sprouted shining wings and flew swiftly towards the castle. Shiki smirked and made pulsating black wings appear before following, leaving the trio to try and keep up as best they could. Few minutes later, the trio were in awe as they followed the two goddesses through the castle. Once they had entered, the main atrium was like a lavish mix of a castle and a resort hotel. Beautiful shades of red, blue, gold and silver covered everything, most shining brightly. There were people of all different shapes and sizes, different races and even some mythical creatures. As they traversed through the castle, however, they seemed to change dimensions with each room. Every room was as if a different land altogether. One moment they're in an indoor hot spring area the size of a small village, the next, they're passing through a snowy mountain hilltop with snowboarding and log cabins. Then they'd be at a huge beach area and so on and so forth. By the time the trio caught up to the goddesses at the entrance to what looked like a lavish nightclub casino, they were all sporting massive blushes. There was something that every guest of the castle had in common. They were all naked. Some people had thin pieces of underwear on like Shiki and Hikari, however, at least 80% of everyone else were simply bare naked. Naruto and Hinata had seen enough genitalia to know their exact size and care by a glance at that point. Even Kurama had to admit Jiraiya's perversions wouldn't even be able to handle that castle. The knowing smiles on Shiki and Hikari let them know it was done intentionally. Seeing Naruto and Hinata avoiding each other's gazes was priceless. Seems you two finally realized your own lack of wardrobe. Hikari giggled with a hand over her mouth. The two teens blushed even more. Along the way, one of the rooms had taken both of their pants, leaving Naruto in frog print underwear and Hinata wearing small cotton white panties that hugged her growing butt and hips. The clear wet stain sat between her legs, while Naruto did his best to hide his not-so-little friend, though he failed miserably if the hungry look from Kurama and some other patrons were enough to go by. Hero goddesses Naruto and Hinata mumbled at the same time. Anyway, since you two bypassed purgatory and made it to the afterlife anyway, we don't have to separate you when visiting everyone. We called them all here so you can talk. However, we can't stay long seeing as you two need to get back to the physical plane to take your genin test. Entering the nightclub casino, they were blown away. There were multiple levels of multiple dance floors with people even flying around and dancing in the air. Cages held dances of every gender, including futas and herms. Shiki and Kami tapped them before flying them high up towards the ceiling that they saw was made of a glowing light blue ball of light. Entering it put them in a literal skybox, with the sun shining overhead and clouds circling the room. There were several tables about, with a few blackjack tables here or there. Their presence alerted the people at one of the table, and everyone gasped when they took in the trio. Hinata-chan. A woman with long black hair and pale eyes stood swiftly, tears entering her eyes. Kami-sama, was this the surprise you told me about? Has my Hinata-chan perished? Ha-chan. Hinata didn't let Hikari answer before flinging herself into the naked bosom of her mother. She let out all the tears she had been forced to hold in since her mother's death after the birth of her younger sister. I'm so happy you two could see each other. This makes being an almost all-powerful deity worth it sometimes. Hikari began rubbing her chest and drooling as she looked on the scene. Shiki smacked her head. Don't perv on their moment, damn it. Naruto's eyes were locked onto two specific people, however. A young man with hair as blonde as his own that he recognized immediately. However, he was holding a young woman with long crimson hair who he didn't know. Yet, tears began to flow down his eyes as he looked at the woman, her beaming smile just like his own. Don't cry, Naru-chan. She spoke his name before walking towards him. You'll make me cry too. She was already tearing up. She nodded. Hi Sachi. Kachan Dezu. Just as with Kurama, Naruto fell forward and wrapped his arms around the woman, letting loose a wave of tears he couldn't control. Minato gave them a few moments before walking forward and wrapping them both in a hug, letting his son let out all the anguish. There was so much Naruto wanted to know. So much he wanted to discuss. But for the life of him, all he could do was cling to them as if he would lose them forever again. The same went for Hinata. Kurama looked at the scenes with a sad frown, rubbing her arm. Seeing the Bijuu's plight, Kushina extended an arm towards her. "Come on, Kurama-chan. I know that's you." Kurama blushed and trembled for a second before a wave of tears burst from her own eyes. She flung herself onto the small family. "Kushina-chan." She cried out. Her emotions were out of whack due to her drop in power. She was sure there was no way she would have shown such weak emotions if she were in her full power state. No way at all. After everyone's emotions had finally calmed down, Shiki and Hikari let the parents catch up with their children. Though were informed that Hashirama and Tobirama were supposed to be there, but they ended up getting into a fight with each other. Mito stayed behind to handle them herself. Shiki and Hikari explained why the trio were there and what they had planned for them as well. "So my Sachi is a Shinigami? We Uzumakis can't help but be badass, even without even trying." Kushina rubbed a finger under her nose. Naruto sat between her and his father, loving every minute he had with them. Regardless of if they were both naked, as was Hinata's mother. Hinata was clinging to her mother just like she used to when she was younger, snuggling into the beautiful woman's side. Kurama was doing the same to her other side, Hitomi having thanked Kurama for saving her daughter's life and turning her into a Megami. "I know you'll use those powers to make us even more proud of you, son." Minato called and patted his son's head. "Hi. So when can I expect divine grandchildren, Naruto-kun, Hinata-chan?" Hitomi teased. Hinata blushed brighter than she ever had before, but instead of fainting, she turned to look at Naruto, or more specifically, his boxers that began tenting. A glazed hungry look formed on her face. Hitomi sweat dropped. "Not the reaction I was expecting, but in any case I would assume that means I'll have grandbabies sooner than not." Kushina shook her head at Hitomi's antics. "Well, what about you, Kurama-chan? You plan on popping out some kids with Sachi?" Kurama scoffed. "You won't get me that easily, Kushi-chan. Naruto doesn't. I'd have kids with you." Naruto blurted out absent-mindedly. Kurama's entire body suddenly matched her hair before she gave the reaction Hitomi wanted, fainted on the spot. "Oh my!" Hinata's voice drew their attention as they saw her gazing lustfully between Kurama and Naruto. The parents' sweat dropped. "She definitely has your libido," Hitomi Minato called. The elder Hyuga could only stifle a chuckle. "Alright, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, that's usually Sis's job, but it's time for them to return. Once they have control of their powers a little better, they'll be able to return on their own to visit though." Shiki nodded. "Then we can have the biggest incestuous orgy ever." Hikari shook her head. "Nah, sis, are you forgetting the orgy from 200 years ago? There was an entire clan through 3 generations a part of that one." "Oh shit, you're right. Well, it'll be one of the biggest incestuous orgies ever." The young spirits could only sweat drop, but it didn't bother them too much. They had been in the afterlife long enough to know how things worked. "I wish we had more time to talk," Kushina called, hugging Naruto. The blonde hugged back and held back a blush. "You can't just unhear what had been heard when your mom was literally pressing her pretty big chest to your face." "Don't worry, Kushi-chan." Minato started. "He'll definitely get strong enough to visit us in no time. Right, son? Right, dad?" Naruto called, bringing a tear to the 4th second's eye from calling him dad. "You two take care of Naru-chan, okay? He's a bit dense, I can see, just like his mother." Hitomi spoke to Kurama and Hinata, getting giggles from the girls and sharp glare from the redhead Uzumaki. "Also, remember that love is not a finite thing. Once you limit it, you bring about hate and jealousy. Don't cut off love for yourselves or for Naru-chan." "Hi, Ka-chan." Hinata and Kurama called at the same time, with Kurama getting odd stares from the Uzumaki family. She simply blushed and ignored them. They all embraced once more before their parents sprouted wings and flew out of the skybox. "Last one to the buffet has dish duty for the next 100 years. They heard Kushina shout before 3 sonic booms were heard. "Ara, it was a pleasure to spend time with you 3. I hope everything goes as planned once you return to the physical world." The trio nodded and bowed to Kami and Shinigami. "We'll contact you ourselves once you've gotten strong enough to handle our call. Be careful down there though. Just because you're Shinigami and Megami doesn't mean your bodies are just as strong yet. If you die prematurely, there won't be much we can do this time. We understand. We won't let you down either, right guys?" Naruto called with fire in his voice. Hinata and Kurama shared his energy with a high. "Alright then. See you guys in the next life." Shiki and Hikari held up 2 orbs, one black and the other white. They expanded over the trio before plunging them into a slumber to easily put their souls back in their bodies. A sharp pain tore through his body, a familiar sight. "I guess it was all a dream," he thought sullenly. The blonde sat up and rubbed his eyes, finding the fatigue leaving him just as swiftly as whatever pain he felt earlier. The ruffling of sheets from another bed made him look to his left. His heart skipped a beat as he saw Hinata starting to awaken as well. He blushed at her cute form as she sat up and yawned, stretching and giving him a nice view of her naked back and bottom, where the hospital gown didn't cover. It wasn't a dream. The blonde Jinchuriki could feel tears entering his eyes. I truly met Tusan and Kachan. Naruto-kun, Hinata gasped as she took in the blonde. She had come to the same conclusion that everything was a dream until laying eyes on Naruto. For a moment, their eyes locked, sapphire meeting pale lavender. Understanding of everything dawned between them, and they could only give each other true smiles, easing their worries for the moment. It started low, as simple chuckles before turning into side-splitting laughter. They didn't know why they were laughing at first, but they didn't care. They needed to purge the pain and sadness from the previous night out of their systems. As they calmed down, they noticed an Anbu had been in the room and was swiftly moving away. Naruto could feel the Anbu, even after he was half a mile away heading towards the Hokage's building. Hinata herself had her Byakugan activated and was following the person with her eyes, something she hadn't been able to do before. The teens looked at each other again and realized they had power they lacked previously. They could feel the strength rolling off of each other in droves, as well as wellsprings of hidden potential they couldn't even fathom. "We're back, Hinata-chan." Naruto called with a smile. Hinata returned the gesture. "Hi, Naruto-kun." "Hey, you didn't stutter." The girl blushed brightly and pushed her fingers together. However, she realized he was right. "Maybe I'm just more comfortable around you now, Naruto-kun." She was happy that maybe her shyness wouldn't prevent her from having a conversation with people now. A small silence began to build as both teens' minds drifted to the events of the afterlife. Naruto blushed a bit and was the first to speak. "So for how long have you know?" He found himself blushing more than Hinata. The Hyuga princess couldn't fight the tint on her cheeks either, but kept Naruto's gaze with a warm yet embarrassed smile. "No, for at least 2 years." Naruto's eyes widened. "That long? How could he have not noticed? But I've admired you ever since that day you stood up to those bullies for me. I never got a chance to say thank you, but every time I tried after that, I'd get too flustered. Eventually, I could only watch as you went about your days, becoming stronger both physically and emotionally. You became a beacon of something I wanted to be. When I saw that most of it was a mask, I fell in love with a you that was determined to stay smiling. I wanted to give you a reason to truly smile, Naruto-kun." She had gotten so lost in her words that she didn't notice the tears falling from Naruto's eyes. "No, I'm sorry, Naruto-kun. I didn't mean to upset you." Naruto chuckled and wiped his eyes. "You didn't upset me, Hinata-chan. I'm just really happy. I didn't think anyone cared about me that much. Not even Jiji or the Ichirakus." He understood now why the girl would always faint around him. Even in the afterlife, he knew the girl was infatuated with him. However, he didn't know she cared for him to that extent. He kicked himself for not understanding her feelings sooner. He could have had a friend all that time. "I didn't see her feelings because I kept trying to throw mine at Sakura-chan," he thought sadly. The Pincat was someone who acknowledged his existence, although violently and not in a positive way at all. She was a symbol of his screwed-up view of companionship, one that he knew was wrong now. However, he knew somewhere deep down, really deep down, Sakura was a good person. But a good person inside and out was right here next to him all along. "No, Naruto-kun, Kurama-chan. She's the Kyuubi, right?" Hinata asked. Naruto froze for a moment. It was a nagging feeling in the back of his head that he was forgetting something. He wasn't sure how Hinata would react knowing he was the Jinchuriki to one of the most powerful Biju, or at least used to be. "Hi, I'm the host of the strongest tailed beast." His gaze found more interest in the world outside the window than the look of disappointment he knew would be on Hinata's face. "She seems really nice. I assume she's been taking care of you for a while. I want to thank you both for saving me last night." Naruto's head snapped to Hinata and saw the knowing smirk on her face. "Why, you're not afraid of me? Knowing that I used to have a demon in me?" Hinata tilted her head in confusion. "Why would I be afraid of you, Naruto-kun? Besides, Shiki-sama said Kurama was a spirit, not a demon. And even if she were, she didn't seem evil to me. Plus, having a demon inside of you doesn't make you a demon either." She giggled at the astonished look on her love's face. "Besides, you're a Shinigami now. I think that makes you far scarier than any Biju." Naruto's sweat dropped. "I'm not scary." He pouted, making the girl giggle even more. "Man, I think I like the Shiryu better. She didn't tease me as much." "Get used to it, Naruto-kun." The duo laughed with each other, finding their situation to be more beneficial than not at that point. A lingering happiness fell over them, one that they were all too eager to prolong. Unfortunately, fate had other plans as the Hokage appeared alongside two Anbu and a swirl of leaves. The teens had felt his arrival beforehand but still pretended to look surprised at the old man. "Gigi." Naruto prepared to jump out of bed, but the Hokage held a hand up. "Please, Naruto-kun, don't push yourself while you are recovering." "Recovering? I feel better than ever." "You too, right, Hinata-chan?" Naruto called. The girl eagerly nodded before moving over to sit next to Naruto on his bed, showing that she was perfectly fine. She tilted her head in confusion as to why the two Anbu and the Hokage were suddenly looking away, with the Hokage trying to hide a small blush on his face. Yes, well I suppose you both do look fine. However, before we continue, I believe you both should wear something more appropriate. The Hokage's words confused the two teens for a bit longer until realization washed over them both. Hinata suddenly felt a breeze over her bare backside that fate as the warmth of her blood rushing to her face took precedence. With the speed of a jonin, the dark-haired teen vanished, with the bathroom door slamming shut in the same instance. Naruto chuckled alongside the others. He simply stood up and dressed right in front of the others until one of the Anbu smacked him in the head. Ow. What was that for? Why are you getting dressed in front of a lady? She howled. Naruto tilted his head. You're a girl. But you're so flat-chested. As soon as the words left his mouth, he realized his mistake. The other Anbu along with the Hokage both took praying positions. May he rest in peace. They both called. The Kai leaking from the now-known female Anbu filled the room. Before anything else could happen, the room door opened, revealing a beautiful red-eyed woman with raven hair. The woman was worried after getting a quick briefing on what had transpired. She looked cool and calm on the outside, but was a whirlwind of anger, anxiousness, and sadness on the inside. With Kurenai's arrival, the Anbu took their hidden positions. Once Naruto and Hinata were both dressed and sitting side by side on a bed, the Hokage cleared his throat. Before we begin, I must apologize to you both as your Hokage for letting what transpired in that clearing happen in the first place. Please forgive this miserable old fool. The Hokage bowed his head, surprising everyone in the room. The adults were surprised at the Hokage showing a moment of weakness, especially to two academy students. However, they could feel his pain. None of them, regardless of their positions, were able to prevent what had happened. If it wasn't for whatever miracle had happened, both teens would truly be dead. It's not your fault, Gigi. Naruto spoke lowly, honestly not sure if he could convince himself of that. Unfortunately, after awaking from the other world, his mind had been working overtime. The clarity of his thoughts had scared him, but also allowed him clearly think of everything that had happened up to that point. The Hokage, as much as he tried to care, didn't do as much as he could have for his charges. Naruto and Hinata both knew being Hokage meant that he had many responsibilities, upwards to what they couldn't even fathom. They were sure that every failed mission, every shinobi that walked out of those walls to never return, impacted the old man every time. However, they both also felt some risk needed to be taken for the greater good. Some sacrifices needed to be made, but that didn't always need to be your own. Meaning, sometimes becoming a villain to your enemies or those that deserved was also an option. The Hokage was too kind-hearted and in turn, let that kindness blind him of the evil right in his own home. Hiruzen's gaze was steeled. He looked at Naruto and watched as he avoided his gaze. Hinata's own eyes were on her, clasped hands on her lap. He knew the teens didn't truly believe he wasn't at fault. It felt as if a small nail was twisting in his heart. Regardless, he spoke just to ease some of the heartache. I take you to remember what happened last night. Both teens nodded slowly. However, both of them seemed to squint in confusion. Hinata spoke up first. No, Hokage-sama, I don't remember what happened after her hand touched her newly reformed eye. Both Hiruzen's and Kurenai's stomach dropped at the implication. Naruto nodded as well. After I passed out from blood loss, I don't remember anything either. How are we alive? The teens were hiding their new powers. They didn't think it would be wise to tell them the truth just yet. Naruto knew they would probably think Kurama had taken over and done something. But there were too many other holes in the previous night to confirm or deny it. Kurenai looked at her leader, catching his eye and silently communicating that maybe it was best to not worry them with such a gruesome evening. If they didn't remember what happened, it was probably for the best. For all intents and purposes, though not my most professional opinion, I believe a miracle occurred. You two must have some higher powers looking out for you. The Hokage played the grandfatherly angle. He'd need to look into the matter on his own, perhaps even get Inoichi to look into the teens' minds at some point in the future. Hinata and Naruto sweat dropped at the Hokage's wordings. They could have sworn they heard Shiki and Hikari giggling in the distance. Ayano Hinata drew their attention once more. What's Kurenai-san doing here? Kurenai smiled sadly. Wow. Thanks for making me feel welcome, Hinata-chan. Kurenai mock pouted. Hinata's eyes widened and she waved her hands frantically. I didn't mean it like that, Kurenai-san. I was just wondering. She stopped when she noticed the older woman stifling her chuckles. The Hyuga teen blushed and hid her face in her hands. Baka Kurenai-san. You tricked me. Kurenai moved to sit next to Hinata and pulled her into a side hug. I did, and I'm sorry. However, besides checking on you, the other reason I'm here is because I'm going to be your legal guardian for a while. Hinata's eyes widened and her mouth hung open. Usually she would have asked what that meant. However, whatever newfound clarity she had acquired in the other world let her process thousands of different scenarios in an almost instant. She immediately knew what that meant and tears welled up in her eyes. He disowned me. He banished me. Her words were punctuated with tears dropping onto Kurenai as the older woman pulled her closer. The dark-haired Jonin hadn't expected her to understand it so quickly. The sudden surge of emotions almost made her cry as well. However, everyone in the room froze as they felt a massive wave Kai. It was enough to make the Jonin hold her breath. Her immediate thought was to look at the Hokage, but the old man was just as stunned as herself, though he seemed to hold up a bit better. She looked to the only other visible person in the room and had to hold back a gulp at the absolutely murderous look in Naruto's eyes. Although his face was passive, his eyes they were as if froze glaciers. Then Naruto-kun Hinata pulled away from Kurenai and wiped her eyes. She placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder and his gaze snapped to her own. Please calm down. It's alright. You know it will be. The ex-Jinchuriki held her gaze, his anger at the news that her own family abandoned her slowly subsiding. He was already well into dozens of ways to make her clan pay. But her eyes. Her soft gaze as they peered into his was almost divine. He couldn't keep his anger, just as she couldn't keep her sadness. They helped each other on a deeper level than most could hope to have. With only a simple gaze, Kurenai observed the two with a bit of unease. She had no problem with Naruto, and seeing him interact with Hinata was actually making her regret how she used to ignore him. He wasn't bouncing off the walls like he used to and seemed to have a tight bond with the girl. A bond that honestly seemed to be helping the girl if only just a little. Maybe the traumatic event of last night made them find comfort in each other for the little time they had shared in the hospital. Kurenai-san. The Hokage smirked at being forgotten for a second. Seeing as they both seem to know what has already transpired, why don't you tell them everything? And if you two are willing, I can postpone the Genin exams until you two are out of the hospital. It wouldn't be fair to anyone regardless of the decision made, but I would like to see you both become shinobi. If for nothing more than to prevent a repeat of last night. Hinata and Naruto looked at Kurenai expectantly. The young Jonin smiled sadly again. So yes, your father officially removed your Hyuga era status. You won't have to change your last name, but you are to have no interaction with the Hyuga clan within its walls unless otherwise stated by myself, the Hokage, and Hiashi. However, there's a bit of good news in this. The ex-Hyuga's eyes perked up at good news. Seeing as Hokage-sama ordered the papers for your expulsion promptly before you woke up, you won't have to be branded with the caged bird seal. As well, Hanabi will be the clan heiress now and won't be branded either. You are free of your clan Hinata, completely and utterly. Her heart fluttered. This was almost everything she had wanted. She no longer needed to pretend to not see the hate thrown her way by both the main and side branches. She wouldn't have to cry herself to sleep knowing her own family, father, sister, and cousin hated her for various reasons, mostly out of her control. She realized that she had failed. A sudden dip in emotions from the girl made both Naruto and Kurenai panic. Hinata-chan, are you alright? The blonde Jinchuriki scooted closer to her, wrapping an arm around her waist as she still leaned into Kurenai's side. The older Jonin hid her small blush at the close contact with the teens, made easier as she was also worried about the younger girl. I wanted to change them to unite the Hyuga clan. But now I can't and now Hanabi will have to deal with it on her own. With how she is I can't see her wanting to change the clan. She'll become just like Hiashi-san. Her sullen words made her shoulders sag. However, a squeeze from both Kurenai and Naruto made her look up. Hinata-chan, I promise you, we'll still do something about your clan. Maybe not soon, but we can unite them. Naruto promised. Though I don't know what we can do, I can help you as well. Whenever an actual plan is thought of. She shot Naruto a withering smirk, knowing the boy was making claims without plans, like him always shouting about being Hokage. Little did she know though, this new Naruto was thinking through thousands of scenarios to help Hinata truly. Hiruzen cleared his throat again, wondering if his presence being forgotten so often was such a good thing. Kurenai-sen has adopted you Hinata-chan, so you will be staying with her from now on. Naruto-kun, I have arranged for you to be moved into the same apartment building as the two. Unfortunately, as a Jonin, Kurenai is not allowed to adopt more than one child. As well, since you two will hopefully be genin before the end of the week, you both will become legal through service regardless. Naruto knew the real reason Kurenai couldn't adopt him was because of his previous Jinchuriki status. That was fine though anyway. Like the Hokage said, once they officially became genin, they would be technical legal adults. Kurenai adopting Hinata was to save her from her clan laws. As soon as Hinata became a shinobi, she wouldn't be Kurenai's ward anymore. It would be more like making them roommates. Thank you Jiji. Naruto bowed, surprising the old man. He hid it with his grandfatherly smile. And if you two don't mind, I'm sure me and Hinata are strong enough to take the test today. You won't have to postpone them. Naruto's mannerisms were definitely surprising the old man as well as Kurenai. However, seeing the resolute look in both teens' eyes, they knew saying no wouldn't be an option. Hiruzen placed his hands behind his back and nodded. I'll have a doctor give you all one more checkup. If they say you are clear to leave, I'll tell the academy to hold the tests later in the day so you two can get prepared. Alright. I'm gonna be a ninja. Naruto jumped up and shouted. Hinata giggled while everyone else smiled warmly. That was the Naruto they remembered. Afterwards, the Hokage and Kurenai left. A doctor gave them one last physical, as well as checking and making sure their wounds wouldn't bother them. They were cleared to leave together. Kurenai awaited them at the entrance to the hospital, and the trio silently made their way to Kurenai's apartment. She explained that the Hokage had already had Anbu move Naruto's things into his new apartment. Or at least, what was left of them. As Hinata and Naruto walked closer to each other than they realized, Kurenai was already thinking of ways to tease the two. However, she kept remembering the reason for their closeness at the moment and decided to see where their newfound companionship would take them. Naruto-kun, come see me when you get a chance. Kurama suddenly called out. Naruto mentally nodded, having wondered why the Biju had been so silent since their return from the afterlife. Said Biju stood within Naruto's mindscape, looking at her new surroundings. Instead of a murky sewer and cage, she stood atop a pagoda on what was a large traditional Japanese castle. The surrounding area was a dense forest with an eternally hazy mist rolling throughout. She smiled at the serene forestland and took in a deep breath. Though the area was beautiful and large, she was still alone. The reason she had been so quiet, however, was that she was busy establishing a direct connection between Naruto and Hinata. She had experimented with what she could do between the two and found out her chakra could still affect both of them, as if she were sealed within them both. Even more, she found out she could even travel to her brothers and sisters through the spirit realm. She had only visited Chimay and her container Fu. Apparently Fu was ostracized from her village just as Naruto. However, it was made worse by Fu not even truly being allowed in the village. Chimay was doing her best to support Fu, but Fu seemed to hate everyone, especially the Biju. Flashback. After changing Naruto's mindscape into the castle and connecting it to Hinata's mindscape, Kurama felt the lands of their mind spreading farther than even she imagined. Small roads appeared on the horizons of the forest, each seeming to lead to different biomes. The desert biome was the closest, and she could feel her sister Shukaku. From her vantage point, she saw a massive sandstorm. She knew it meant Shukaku was in turmoil, and she wouldn't be able to reach her until they were closer together. Some of the others were too far away to get a good look at, but a dense forest with what appeared to be spiderwebs was close enough. The forest radiated both warmth and a foreboding air. Chimay was an energetic and somewhat quirky Biju. She was probably the most easy to get along with out of all of the Biju. So for there to be a foreboding air about her made her worry. Seems like I only have enough strength to get that far anyway, Kurama thought before reforming into her full size and leaping through the forest land gracefully. By the time she had gone 3 bounds, she was already at the entrance to the thread forest. A barrier stood before her, the kanji for whatever seal was used on Chimay shining at its center. So I can break the seals from my side and release my brothers and sisters. When they told me I was free, I didn't think it meant like this. I can literally do almost anything. But releasing them without making contact first would be bad, plus I don't know if it would kill their host. But that thought, Kurama instead decided to simply walk through the barrier. To her delight, the seal stayed strong, yet gave her no resistance as she entered. As soon as she was through the seal, however, she was met with a large cave, not a forest. The same web-like threads from the forest lined the cave walls. Before her stood a row of bars just like her previous L. The same kanji from the barrier sat on the bars. Kurama ni. But how? Chimay's visage emerged from the darkness of the cage. Her glowing eyes beyond her helmet-like head dimmed to show confusion and shock. Am I imagining things now? You aren't hallucinating, Chimay Amato. I'm really here. A lot has happened, so much that I don't have time to explain right now. Chimay was confused and ecstatic to see her older sister. She wanted to ask her so much, but she could feel the huge amounts of energy Kurama was using to be there with her. I'm going to try something, Chimay, but I need your host in here with us. What are you going to do? The Kabuto beetle was hesitant. She wanted to trust her sister, but after 14 years within Fu, trust was something she didn't have the luxury of. If Kurama was there, she could have very well killed her own host and was trying to release her by doing the same to Fu. Kurama smirked as she could feel Chimay's thoughts. She could almost hear them. As I said, I can't explain everything, but I promise you that I mean no harm to you or your host. I've established a bond with my own container that has allowed me more freedom than you can imagine, Amato. Allow me to attempt to extend the same to you and your container. The wave of pain struck Kurama as the seal within Fu finally seemed to notice her presence. It was attempting to reject her, but Kurama was still far more powerful than the measly seal. She unleashed more of her power, flooding the cave and stopping the pulse of pain. Chimay saw it all and knew her sister wouldn't put herself that amount of pain if she were lying. Alright. Chimay's voice suddenly became chipper. Don't worry, Ni-chan. Lucky 7 Chimay is willing to trust you. That's great, so any day now. Kurama felt the drain of her energy become faster. She had a decent amount to spare, but she still didn't want to waste so much for no reason. A big part of her was happy Chimay didn't mistrust her for too long. She was one of her favorite siblings. Chimay went silent for a while, and Kurama knew she was silently communicating with Fu. It was only like a howling wind within her mind. A few moments later and a young dark-skinned girl with mint green hair appeared. "What the hell do you want, insect?" Fu spat. Chimay visibly flinched. Fu was about to continue until she noticed a shadow cast over her. An oppressive aura seemed to press into her. She slowly turned only to be greeted with a mauve Kurama, a sinister grin on her face. "Yeah." Fu shouted and scrambled back, falling to her ass. Her back hit the cavern wall quicker than she liked and panic set in. "Look here, ninjan. You obviously know I'm the nine-tailed demon, the Kyuubi. That beautiful beetle you called an insect is my little sister and also probably one of the only reasons you're still alive if the feeling I'm getting from you is right. You better treat her with respect or I'll undo what I'm about to do." Fu was still panicking, but it lessened into confusion at Kurama's words. Chimay was confused and anxious too. She was a bit worried when Kurama scared Fu, but she felt no actual malicious intent. It was just a prank. "You will find your answers beyond this cave. Once I do this, you will be connected to my host and his lover, almost as I am. You will be able to come and go within their collective mindscapes. However, you will need Chimay's help to do so." "Chimay?" Fu questioned. "You never told her your real name?" Chimay seemed to blush sheepishly. "We've never had a civil enough conversation. She wants nothing to do with me." "You're damn straight. You're the reason everyone hates me. They hate her just as much." Kurama roared, once again sending the girl into a panic. "Do you think we chose to be sealed inside of you humans? To be stripped away from our family and to have our freedom stolen? Most of my brothers and sisters were sold as simply weapons to your villages before you were even born. We've been enslaved for more than half of our lives in existence. Chimay has every right to hate you and everyone else in your pathetic village. But as far as I've seen, she has done nothing but attempt to befriend you. So for the record, I do this for my sister, not for your ungrateful ass. If you meet my container and spout this nonsense, I will have no problem locking you out of our realm." "Our realm?" Chimay's eyes widened. "You mean you can actually connect Fu's mind to your host's? How is that possible?" "I'll just show you." Kurama called as she withheld a shudder. The seal was trying to reject her again. "Hold on to your horses, cause I've never done this before. Shiki, Hikari, if you guys can hear me, help me out please." The white and black orb of light appeared next to Kurama as soon as she spoke. The black one bounced off her head once, clearly indicating its annoyance. Kurama just chuckled but was happy they were there. "We're going to alter the seal to allow you access into a joint mindscape. You'll still be tethered to Fu's soul, but you'll be able to spread your wings at least. And you can also communicate with me, my host, and his mate from your mind Fu. Though as of now, you really don't deserve this." Fu scoffed. However, her heart began to flutter at the thought of actual companionship. She wondered what the host of the Kyuubi was like. Would he be friendly? She knew he couldn't have been as bitter as her if the Kyuubi seemed so benevolent. Lost within her thoughts, Fu almost missed the two orbs beginning to glow. Kurama's 9 tails began to glow as well before they plunged into the seal on Chimay's cell. A blinding flash emitted from the seal. They felt themselves being pulled and then falling. As the light became too much, both Fu and Chimay passed out. Then flashback, Kurama could feel Chimay and Fu's presences within the castle. They still hadn't awoken yet so she couldn't explain the situation. However, there was now a clear path to the Thread Forest and it was so close that Kurama could reach it within a single bound. She had successfully connected Naruto and Fu's mindscapes. Or better yet, their souls. With a smirk, Kurama began to head back into the castle. She couldn't wait for Naruto and Hinata to meet their newest partner. The academy was abuzz with chatter from both students and teachers. The news that the graduation exam would be postponed until later that night surprised everyone. It had never been done before and the Hokage didn't give a clear reason for why he had done it, though being the Hokage people didn't question it. "Yes, this is literally just because I don't feel like giving an actual explanation." Naruto had gotten acquainted with his new apartment swiftly. There wasn't much left and he'd need to furnish the place. Since it was so bare, he didn't want to spend much time in it and instead helped Hinata settle in with Kurenai. The woman's apartment was messier than he would have guessed. It did look like she had tried to clean up a bit but apparently she was used to simply living alone to not care about the mess. Unfortunately for her, Hinata was a huge neat freak and admonished the Jounin much to Naruto's amusement and the older Kunoichi's chagrin. After cleaning for a bit, Kurenai dismissed the two to get ready for the exam while she herself still needed to finalize things for receiving a genin squad of her own. "Naruto-kun, about what happened with Shiki-sama and Hikari-sama. Shouldn't we try to access the power they awakened in us?" Hinata inched closer to Naruto and whispered to him. For a moment, she noticed that he had somehow become just an inch taller than her when it was the other way around before the incident. Naruto folded his arms in thought. I thought about that too. But remember what Shiki-sama said. We drained a lot of our energy accessing the powers to avenge ourselves. He tried not to think about the people they had killed in the clearing the previous night. She said that we'd need to train ourselves back up again before really being able to access any of our god abilities. Hinata pouted. However, she attempted to activate her Shintensubyakugin anyway. Unfortunately for her, it caused a massive spike of energy that immediately exploded outward around her, pushing Naruto away and knocking barrels and carts aside. She dropped to her knees panting. Hinata-chan, what the hell was that? Naruto called through his coughs, unlodging himself from the remains of a cabbage cart. My cabbages. Said owner of the cart held his head in frustration. First the bald kid with the arrow on his head and now this. The crowd began to form at the commotion and several Anbu appeared. Hinata looked around warily and quickly came up with an excuse. I had to sneeze. With wind chakra. Naruto added. Oh okay. Most people acknowledge before moving about their business. The Anbu stood looking at the two academy students. The teens could only sweat drop as they knew trained ninja wouldn't believe such a blatant "bless you Lady Hyuga. Be on your way." One called before they all disappeared. Hikari-sama, no wonder they can't catch me. They're all morons. Naruto could hear Hikari giggling in his mind. Hinata apologized for doing something so reckless but was pleased to know that they were indeed more powerful than they were previously. Though they wouldn't be able to access their godly abilities anytime soon, they could see what all had changed in the academy. When the two reached the academy, a sense of anxiousness enveloped them. It would be their last day as technical civilian. After the things that had happened, Naruto knew there was so much more in store for him in his shinobi career than simply attempting to become Hokage. Hinata also felt that becoming a Megami would bring about more chaos than simply wanting to unite her clan. Plus, they hadn't forgotten what Shiki and Hikari said about something so big happening it could affect other dimensions. And it was all going to begin the minute they received their hit I-8. They entered the building and weren't surprised that they were the last two to arrive. The class buzzed with minute chatter and only a few paid attention to the two as they entered. Surprising to them both, they could feel the emotions of those around them, Hinata more so than Naruto. The first person that caught their attention, being the one with the most emotional response surprisingly, was Sasuke. They could feel his eyes linger on them both, loathing towards Naruto and grudging respect for Hinata. Naruto knew he hated him for being the dead last, and Hinata figured he respected her simply because the Hyuga were a powerful clan. The next was Sakura. The Pinket was mostly exuding lust, aimed at the Uchiha beside her, but his attention being on them made her judge them as well. Absolute disgust for them both, apparently. Naruto cringed a bit, knowing for a fact that he and Sakura would probably never be more than friends, if that. He honestly didn't understand why she hated him as much as he felt from her. Hinata, on the other hand, knew Sakura hated her because she was the only female in class Sasuke actually held a somewhat decent conversation with occasionally. Hiba's emotions were plain as day. He didn't outright hate Naruto, but a condescending aura grew whenever they were near each other. They used to be friends, somewhat, but after Naruto started to be seen as the dead last, Kiba became a major offender of antagonizing him. Hinata shivered a bit at the slightly lustful and somewhat possessive feeling she was getting from him. She wasn't used to the feeling of being wanted at all, let alone having someone seem to almost obsess over her. Though she also felt a small bit of protectiveness as well, something that eased her mind just a tiny bit. Kiba could be a problem, she knew, but he wasn't a lost cause. In their musings, a surprising aura spiked. Next to Sasuke, Ino looked at the two with clear confusion on her face. Both Naruto and Hinata immediately felt that she was analyzing them more so than the others. It clicked to them that Ino was also stronger than they had realized at first. Though they still felt her lust for the Uchiha, to a much smaller scale than Sakura's, they also felt a suppressed intellect. Like, forcibly suppressed. Hinata frowned and quickly activated and deactivated her Byakugan in a split second. Naruto-kun, Hinata started, a sliver of anger escaping her lips in a whisper. I feel it. She has a seal on her. Naruto answered, his own anger building. What they felt was something preventing the Yamanaka from utilizing her full cognitive abilities. Someone had intentionally stunted the girl's mental capabilities, and judging from the chakra, it was most likely someone in her family. Much to their annoyance, just as fast as Ino had tried to analyze them, she stopped in favor of doting over the Uchiha again. The suppressed Ino loathed Naruto and didn't care for Hinata. The last four that paid attention to them were more easily discernible, yet not what they would have expected. Ami, Shikamaru, Choji, and Shino. Ami was someone they had very little interactions with and sometimes even forgot existed. However, her gaze found the two and a blush crossed her face. There was clear lust and admiration in her, aimed at them both. Even with the clarity granted to them by their new status, they were absolutely confused. What they remembered was that Ami was a bully and one of the main Sasuke fangirl leaders. Though she hadn't been as vocal after being put in her place by Ino and Sakura a year back, she was still occasionally a bitch towards people. It was peer pressure. Hinata thought as she felt the girl's hidden emotions. A kind heart and scared soul resided in Ami. Hinata smiled at the girl, hoping that it would be just enough to let her know they could eventually be friends. To her relief, the purple-haired girl smiled back sheepishly, her blush growing. She nudged Naruto, and he nodded his acknowledgement of the ex-bully. Shikamaru, not to their surprise any longer, was the one that analyzed them the most. He could tell there was something different about them already just by how they carried themselves. However, just as they expected, he mumbled troublesome and simply went back to sleep. He'd probably question them later. As of now, he seemed interested in the two, but friendly nonetheless. Taoji didn't care one way or the other. They could actually hear his stomach growling and knew whatever was on his mind had to do with food. Shino held slight animosity towards them. It had startled the divine duo at first. They could literally hear the billions of insects within him shouting at him to drain their chakra dry. Beforehand, Shino had been cordial with them, more so Hinata. However, their change had made them chakra intense and it was causing clear discomfort towards Shino. He hadn't said anything because it would cause a ruckus, but knowing that something major had happened to the two so big that it drove his hive mad was obviously upsetting the teen. His shades held Hinata and Naruto's gazes. Though his anger was due to his hive's restlessness, thus earning the two his ire and caution, a small part of him that knew them as comrades also wondered if something bad had happened to cause the change. Either way, he would get answers from them as soon as he could. The insistent fluttering of his hives was becoming painful. Are you two going to stand there and stare at people all day, or can we begin the test? Iruka called behind the two. The young gods blushed sheepishly realizing they hadn't analyzed everyone as swiftly or discreetly as they had thought. They moved to sit side by side in the back of the class, a bit to the class's shock. Usually Hinata was fade into the background and Naruto would either cause a ruckus with Sasuke or try to flirt with Sakura. The Avenger and the Pincat actually felt a small bit of confusion that he didn't acknowledge them. Alright class. Since you've all been informed of the test being postponed and it's already late, let's get started immediately. I won't repeat what I said earlier. I'm sure you're all ready for to become shinobi and kunoichi. So let's not delay any longer. The test began and people failed or passed swiftly. Hinata passed easily, almost as if she could have slept through the test. When Naruto was called into the other room, a sense of paranoia struck him. Something's not right he thought. Yeah, like you and Hinata-chan ignoring me for so long. Kurama's voice echoed in his mind, making him falter in his step. Kurama-chan. Where have you been? Doing a little this and that. But I've been watching you two since you left Kurenai's apartment. We'll talk later. I want you and Hinata-chan to come see me once you pass your test. Naruto mentally nodded and prepared himself as he stood before Mizuki and Iruka. Immediately, he realized what was wrong. Mizuki was releasing a palpable dark aura and channeling hatred at Jinchuriki. Ah, okay. He hates my guts and is probably going to fuck up my test. Naruto smirked confidently. Let's see him try. Iruka sensed the confidence from one of his favorite students and couldn't help but feel like this would be the time Naruto actually succeeded. The smirk was contagious. Alright Naruto. This test will be just a tad bit different from the ones you've without warning. Iruka and Mizuki's hands blurred as they threw two kunai at the blonde. Naruto lazily caught Mizuki's since it was thrown faster and deflected Iruka's. The scarred Chunin's kunai bounced harmlessly off the wall, only chipping it bit, showing that the kunai was dulled. Naruto looked at Mizuki's and frowned. Nah, Iruka-sensei, are these supposed to be this sharp? Naruto touched the tip and cut his finger a bit. After getting over the shock of Naruto's reaction speed, Iruka shook his head and took the kunai. No, Naruto, these aren't supposed to be sharp. He turned a glare to Mizuki who scratched the back of his head. What? I swore I pulled those from the dull kunai box. Maybe a sharp one got mixed in. No harm no foul. Naruto shrugged. Iruka frowned at them both. Well, be more careful Mizuki. You could seriously hurt someone. Iruka didn't for a second believe that it was an accident. He hadn't become a Chunin by being that careless. Though, he felt he should have noticed the kunai far before it had even touched his partner's hands. Also, good reaction speed Naruto. Though the test was for you to use the substitution jutsu. I suppose your reaction speed is good enough to bypass it. I can still do it. Naruto substituted with a log in the corner meant for the test. Iruka chuckled while Mizuki grumbled under his breath. Alrighty then. Next will be a Jinjutsu test. Are you ready Naruto? Iruka asked as he sat back down next to Mizuki and folded his hands. Naruto stood before the two with a small smirk. Hi. He simply called immediately, making the Iruka that had just sat down flicker away, while the real one was in the process of moving behind him. The scarred Chunin had the grace to blush sheepishly before coughing into his fist. Well I definitely didn't expect you to figure that one out so quickly. Even Mizuki had to smirk a bit at Iruka. Come on, sensei. Give me something challenging. Naruto sighed. The next test was a simple henge, with Naruto transforming into the Sandame perfectly. At that point, Mizuki realized Naruto was going to pass the test and his plan would be shot. No, I can't let him. I have to do something. This is going really good, Naruto. Only one more test and you'll pass. I just need you to perform a simple Bunshin jutsu. The blonde was a bit giddy on the inside. He knew the clone jutsu was one of his weakest, but now that he was a technical god, he was sure there was no way he could fail it. He had a deeper understanding of chakra and how it all worked within himself and the world. He held up a single hand sign and began to mold the chakra expertly. However, he felt a tug, almost as if something was interfering with his chakra. His eyes narrowed a bit as he vaguely saw Mizuki trying to discreetly perform some type of jutsu. He's trying to fuck me over. Well, two can play that game. With a sinister smirk, Naruto flared through several more hand signs, causing his chakra to flare around his body and cause a small whipping wind in the room. Both Chunin were startled by the action, and Mizuki stopped his own jutsu in shock. Naruto, or Iruka didn't finish as Naruto called out his new jutsu. Fuetin. K's Bunshin no Jutsu. In burst of wind, a second Naruto appeared next to the original, floating off the ground on a whirlwind. The clone's entire body seemed to radiate with the wind, its hair blowing wildly. The two Chunin's jaws dropped. An elemental clone. Unlike any I've seen before. Naruto, how did you do this? Iruka called, more excited than anything. He had been worried about his surrogate little brother's chances of passing the test, but now was wondering if he had been holding back that whole time. I learned my elemental affinity a few weeks back. I've been training on my own since then and found out I have a knack for creating jutsu. But please don't tell anyone else. Jiji told me to wait until I'm a genin to show this. Naruto lied. The jutsu he performed was simply knowledge he gained with his new transformation. The wind clone he created was closer to an actual wind elemental than a simple elemental clone. However, just like the shadow clone, it would send its memories and experience back to the original, including physical experience. The wind the clone was made of was a form of divine chakra. It could physically alter Naruto's body upon returning to him. This is brilliant, Naruto. I'm happy to say that you've passed with flying colors. Iruka did his best to hold back the smile that threatened to split his face. On Naruto's part, he held in his own excitement and simply bowed to the two. He received his hit I-8 and exited the room with it on his forehead. Upon seeing the blonde, many students let out gasps. Holy shit, the dope passed. Someone called. My god, miracles do happen. Another shouted. If he could pass, then we can definitely get a date with Sasu-kun. A random fangirl squealed. Get near him and I'll strangle you with your own intestines. Sakura barked. The class sweat dropped at the girl as a dark aura appeared around her. Ignoring the comments, Naruto moved back to sit next to Hinata. After everything was said and done, Iruka and Mizuki returned to give them one last speech about their duties as the new generation of shinobi and kinmochi for the village. Team assignments will be held tomorrow at 10 a.m. Class dismissed. Thank you, sensei. The class chorused before everyone began to head out to meet their parents and loved ones. Congratulations, Naruto-kun. Hinata and Naruto lingered behind as people began to leave. Ah no, Kurama-chan wants to speak with us too, within the seal. Naruto nodded. Congrats to you too, and yeah, she told me earlier. We can do it right now if you don't need to be home right away. The Hyuga heiress frowned at that. She doubted her father would care whether or not she had passed, so getting home to inform him right away didn't really bother her. It was a bit depressing, but she smiled knowing that with her new power, she could prove him and everyone else in her clan wrong about her. Hi, Naruto-kun. Let's go now. The two new genin left the classroom and went to the small library of the academy building. They sat next to each other in a discreet corner before taking meditative positions. Within moments, they stood before the large Japanese castle within Kurama's forest. Slightly beforehand, Kurama sat within a large foyer-like area within the castle in her lowly form, her legs folded and sipping tea. Fu and Chimei had awakened a while ago and were still exploring the area and the castle. The strongest of the Bijuu sighed in contentment as she felt the excitement of her sister and her container as they experienced their first taste of freedom in around 15 years. When the two had awoken, Kurama gave Fu one more warning about treating her and her younger sister with respect, in which she was surprised that the green-haired Kunoichi actually apologized to them both sincerely. She explained that seeing the castle and knowing that she truly had a safe haven gave her more hope than she'd ever had in her life. While they were away, Kurama had been attempting to contact some of her other siblings. Though she had been freed by Shiki and Hikari, her power from reviving Naruto wasn't completely restored yet. She was recovering far faster than she would have if the seal were still taking her power though. As of then she was at about Chimei's level. It would probably only take a few more days or possibly weeks to be back to full strength. She figured until she was at least at Jayuki's level, she wouldn't be able to reach the others unless their host were closer. She had tried going through the spirit world, but she would need some time to learn how to navigate it. The place was way too huge. None of the other paths had become any clearer either. She was worried about her other siblings. Mainly Shukaku. The Tanuki had always been rowdy and standoffish. She was the weakest of them all, and it made her want to prove herself. She could only imagine what being sealed had done to her psyche. "We're back, One-sama." Chimei's voice called out, sounding a bit different. Kurama looked up to see Fu walking back with a girl just as small as herself hanging on her back. Kurama-sama. Chimei's lowly now too. Her tone was slightly confused, but clearly annoyed. True enough, Chimei dropped from Fu's back and ran at her sister, jumping on her with a hug. One-sama. Her figure was close to Kurama's at the moment, being small-chested with thick thighs. However, her were just brushing B-cup and her thighs weren't as thick. They had similar hips and muscle mass, though Chimei was about 2 inches taller. Her skin was the same shade of brown as Fu's, and her hair flowed down her back much like Sakura's, yet was deep blue with light green tips. There were 7 distinctive spikes at the end that held the green tips. "Chimei, what are you doing? You didn't need to make yourself small too." Kurama was a bit flattered. The 7-tailed loli shook her head. "Yes, I did. It would be disrespectful to take a form that overshadowed you, One-sama. Besides, this is comfortable and fits my personality more." The red-haired Bijuu blushed. She had no idea how much Chimei respected her. It brought tears to her eyes and a burning pride to her chest. She hugged the younger Bijuu tightly. "Oh my Mato. I love you so much." "Love you too, One-sama." "The Mato. One-sama. The Mato. One-sama. Oh god, where did that sunset come from?" Fu shouted, falling over and holding her eyes. Their moment was interrupted as Kurama felt Naruto and Hinata's presence entering the dimension. Fu stayed on the ground in the fetal position, shaking from what she had just seen. As the two entered the castle, they could only look around in amazement. "Wow, Kurama-chan. You've been busy." "Yep, Naru-kun. We've got more family now too." Chimei waved at the two, but stayed clinging to Kurama. Naruto and Hinata paused at seeing the two. "Why are you both naked?" Kurama had the grace to blush, but Chimei just looked confused. "Well, I haven't figured out what type of outfit I want to wear yet. Plus since we've all seen each other naked already anyway, I don't see the problem." Chimei giggled. "We're exhibitionist." Amato. Hinata and Naruto chuckled at the two. "So you're the 7 tails?" Naruto questioned. "Hi." Chimei shouted enthusiastically. "And that's my container, Fu-chan." She pointed to the girl who was now sitting with her knees pulled to her chest. She seemed to have calmed down from the odd sunset but still looked at Hinata and Naruto warily. Right away, Naruto could see the hurt and fear within Fu's eyes. She was guarded as well. In that one moment he understood that she had been abused and mistreated too. With a quick glance at Chimei, he noticed loneliness in her eyes too, but happiness from being around Kurama. Naruto-kun. Hinata placed a hand on his shoulder, showing him that she felt everything too. He nodded and approached Fu. "Hey. My name's Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, Kurama-chan's Jinchuriki." He sat a few feet in front of her. "I'm Fu. I don't have a family name." She stated curtly, though the fear in her eyes had started to fade. She was trying to get comfortable around them. "I'm Hinata Hyuga. Nice to meet you, Fu-chan." Hinata stood behind Naruto with a warm smile and exuded a warm aura that made Fu relax even more. "How Fu started. How are you like that?" The young deities looked at the older girl in confusion. Fu moved to sit on her knees, no longer showing a physical guard. "What do you mean, Fu-chan?" Hinata asked. "You're not faking," she called loudly. "You're actually happy." Naruto frowned at that but tried to smile immediately after. "Yeah, I'm happy. But don't let that fool you. I was killed last night and so was Hinata Haim." Now it was Fu's turn to be confused. She was puzzled for a moment before growling in annoyance. She kind of figured they were fucking with her, but she still couldn't sense a lie. "What are you talking about? I was oblivious to being a Jinchuriki until last night. A bunch of villagers knocked me out and took me out of the village to torture and kill me. While I was dying, I met Kurama-chan. Also, Hinata Haim showed up and tried to save me, but they killed her too. Luckily, Kami-sama and Shinigami-sama gave me and Hinata Haim a second chance. I'm happy because I got closure from things from my past, as well as finding my first true friends in Kurama-chan and Hinata Haim." Fu looked at the two with a deadpan expression. She didn't want to believe a thing they were saying. Honestly, she had no reason to believe them. It was such a far-fetched story yet something inside her couldn't dispute them. "That's for free. Now don't go telling everyone that story, you little shit." Shikey's voice echoed into Naruto and Hinata's minds. The duo could only blush sheepishly, not realizing they probably should keep the real story secret. Either way, Shikey had forced Fu to start believing them. But that's even more of a reason to hate them. To hate everyone and everything. Even with Kurama-sama. "She came to us to give us a bit of freedom, but she's supposed to be the incarnation of hatred." "Where'd you hear that dumbass shit from?" Kurama called in annoyance. Chimay just giggled. I wasn't born an incarnation of hatred. But since I'm a chakra-based spirit, my emotions are more potent than humans. You'd get pissed too if you were put under control of some freaky pink-eye-looking bastard and then somehow subdued by a wood-using pansy just to see your brothers and sisters auctioned off like slaves and then sealed inside of a person with enough chakra to keep you firmly locked away in a dark sewer. Then to constantly be sealed for several decades just to almost taste freedom, end up under the control of another pink-eyed bastard and sealed once again into this dumbus for 13 years. Everyone sweat dropped as Kurama's anger caused the castle to shake. The tiny terror even had her hair bellowing behind her, much like Naruto's mother. Point taken, Fu conceded. See Fu-chan. Hinata started. The Biju are just as much victims here as you and Naruto-kun. Yes, we've all had shitty lives and have suffered unjustly. But that doesn't mean that we need to wallow in our pity when we could easily be doing things to make our lives better. As much as it pains me and Naruto-kun killed the villagers that killed us. And if I had to do it again, I would in a heartbeat to protect my loved ones. Naruto was a bit shocked at that. Hinata was dead serious. He could sense her thinking of others that would potentially try to harm them in the future and knew that she would strike them down with no hesitation. He was still on the fence about murdering, but realized that they were ninja. They were trained assassins. Their job revolved around killing, and him wanting to be Hokage would mean he'd probably have to kill more than anyone else. Beyond that even, he was a Shinigami. A literal death god. It was something he would need to come to terms with eventually, but for now, he decided to simply focus on what was in front of him. I just don't know. All of my life there has only been one person. She paused and looked at Chimay as she clung to Kurama sadly. Well, two people that have ever cared for me. And honestly speaking, I haven't been very cordial with either of them. I've been hated by my entire village besides the village chief for all 15 years of my life. People have tried to drug me and kill me for as long as I can remember. One person even tried to rape me a few years ago. A dark aura flooded the room from the others present, though Chimay's was the heaviest. I made sure she suffered a fate worse than what she was going to do to Fu. Wait, she? Naruto asked. Kurama scoffed. What, did you think men were the only ones capable of such a despicable thing? Yes kid, women are just as fucked up as men. But now I'm interested in what you did to her, Amato. Fu blacked out and I took control for a bit. I drug her sorry ass into the worst part of the jungle and sprayed her with the strongest pheromone I could produce. I didn't leave until I saw every man-eating plant and giant bee have their way with her before plastering her to a cave wall and impregnating her with dozens of eggs. As far as I know, she's still there bolstering the insect population. Fu hadn't known about that and actually looked at the Biju with slight fear but more awe. She hadn't realized she would be willing to go that far for her. Naruto and Hinata could only smile. They would do the same thing, if not, something worse if anyone, regardless of who they were, attempted to force themselves on someone they cared about. Or at all for that matter. There was a small pause in the conversation as everyone reeled in their emotions. Thank you all of you. Fu bowed before the divine duo. I'm so sorry Chimay-sama for treating you so poorly all these years. I promise to be a better partner from now on. Chimay removed herself from Kurama and slowly walked over to Fu. Her gaze was almost unreadable, though a small frown graced her lips. She stood over the mint-haired girl with a hand on her hip, simply looking over her for several seconds. Fu-chan, the girl in question slowly looked up with hesitation. The small flash of fear in her eyes showed that she was expecting rejection. You don't have to call me Sama. That honor belongs to Big Sis. And apology accepted. She knelt down and hugged the girl, finally making her release a wave of tears she didn't know she was holding. Naruto, Hinata, and Kurama decided to give the two a moment to themselves and exited the castle. They hopped to the tallest pagoda and looked out over the misty forest, relishing the beauty that Kurama was able to create. "It's so relaxing," Hinata called as she leaned against Naruto's right side. Kurama leaned up against his life and nuzzled into his neck, much to his embarrassment. Yep. I made it big enough for everyone to stay eventually. Once I get my full strength back and you two unlock your godly abilities, we should be able to bring this place into a separate pocket dimension closer to your dimension. Meaning you all and anyone you want to bring will be able to actually live here. Like a summon's realm. Wait, really? That's awesome. Naruto shot up, knocking both girls off of him, much to their chagrin. Now we really need to get our powers up to par. I don't think it'll be that easy, Naruto-kun. Even if we're stronger than the average genin, I doubt we'd be able to become as strong as Hikari-sama and Shiki-sama anytime soon. Kurama nodded. She's right. You two aren't even as strong as I am yet and I'm not at full power. I'd say you guys are solid jonin, but with the little experience you have, even some special jonin could give you some go. That bad Naruto had hoped whatever boost they had been given would have made him ready to face Cage. But look at this way, kid. Kurama chirped. You literally just became genin. A few months under a Jonin instructor and you and Hinaheim will most likely be the strongest people in this village, at the very least on par with me at full strength. After that, we can all grow by leaps and bounds. Plus, as soon as you two start unlocking your godly powers, I doubt anyone short of Cage ability will be able to even spit in your direction. So about half a year before we can actually start making big moves. Give or take a few months. Naruto laid back on the pagoda and looked up at the huge moon in the sky. Oh well. Never wanted anything handed to me on a silver platter anyway. I'll still be Hokage and I'll work my ass off to make it happen. That's the spirit, Naruto-kun. Kurama pumped her fist up and Hinata just blushed and giggled at the two. Oh no, I know you'll succeed, Naruto-kun. I'll make sure of it as well. Afterwards, the trio rejoined Fu and Chimei. They discussed their personal lives within their villages, learning more about the village head of Takigakure. Fu was more animated than they could have thought. She honestly reminded them a bit of Naruto before his transformation, though they saw she could reel in her excitement better than Naruto could. Everyone became friends fast. Soon the group had to depart, promising to spend time with each other as much as possible, much to Fu's delight. Chimei and Kurama decided they would go to Fu's seal to spend time together and also to not leave the girl alone. Now that their minds and souls were connected, Fu's seal wouldn't reject Kurama any longer. They all finally had companionship. As soon as they had reawoken, Naruto and Hinata felt something off. Can you hear that, Hinata-heim? Naruto asked, looking around in confusion. Yes, that sounds like a silent alarm. She gasped and began to run from the library. A silent alarm? For what? Something important is happening for ninja only. It's an alarm to alert any active shinobi to report to the Hokage Tower. My father told me about it a while ago. They rushed to the Hokage Tower just in time to see a bunch of Chunin and Jonin in front of the Hokage. They stayed as far back as they could while using enhanced hearing chakra to listen in. Please bring in Naruto Uzumaki unharmed if possible. We cannot let the forbidden scroll of sealing fall into the wrong hands. Hiruzen called before dismissing the shinobi to find him. Uh-oh, he muttered. Hinata narrowed her eyes and activated her Byakugan. She began to scan the entirety of the village and noticed someone using a henge that looked like Naruto. Naruto-kun, I found the imposter. It's Mizuki-sensei and he's leaving the village as we speak with a scroll. Naruto's visage became serious as well as he stood and felt his full strength flowing through his body. Sure enough, he could sense Mizuki with the scroll. Let's go, Hina-heim. Naruto created a K's bunshin and sent it to the Hokage as he and Hinata blasted off in the direction of Mizuki, leaving a powerful backdraft behind them. As the Hokage prepared to head back into this tower, the storm clone landed in front of him. And Naruto-kun. What are you doing here? Where is the scroll you stole? The Hokage signaled his Anbu to appear, surrounding the boy but not harming. The clone threw its hands up in defense. Hold on a sec, Gigi. For one, I'm just a clone. 2, the boss was in the library with Hinata-heim this whole time and we just heard the silent alarm and came to see what was going on. Hinata was able to spot someone henged as me with a scroll and her and the boss are on the way to confront him. Promise Takami we didn't do anything wrong. Hiruzen's scowl deepened. So someone was trying to frame Naruto-kun, I should have known. I assume it is Mizuki Toji. Hiruzen whispered. The Anbu and the clone heard but said nothing. Naruto figured Iruka must have told the Hokage about the test earlier and believe he was stupid enough to try something so soon. The clone deadpanned in his mind. Anbu, please catch up to the real Naruto and the young Hyuga heiress. Retrieve them safely and return the scroll with extreme prejudice. The Anbu dispersed without hesitation. Actually, Gigi, I'm pretty sure they'll be done with him by the time anyone shows up. The clone rubbed the back of his head with a confident grin. Oh? Well then, let's go enjoy the show. The Hokage continued into the tower. With their newfound speed, Naruto and Hinata easily overtook Mizuki. Hinata sideswiped him with a kick, knocking him into a tree and sending him plummeting into a clearing below. Upon hitting the ground, his henge fell. What the hell? Who's there? Show yourself. Mizuki set the scroll down and pulled a giant shuriken from his back. Naruto and Hinata hid in the treetops, hiding their presence. Mizuki team, you have failed this village. Naruto's voice echoed around the clearing. The man was in such a panic that he didn't recognize the voice. Failed this village? Fuck this village. Any village that lets a demon spawn walk free can burn in hell for all I care. I'm going to a real village, one that will give me the power I deserve to come back and purge this shithole. Naruto appeared behind Mizuki while he was speaking. He let his chakra presence grow slowly until the Chunin was able to sense it. However, once he turned around, Naruto was gone. You speak of Naruto-kun as if he is a 1,000-foot demon bent on destroying humanity. Yet, it's you threatening to betray the place you swore to protect by taking that headband. Would the deaths of hundreds of innocents mean nothing to you? Hinata's voice echoed next. You're a fool if you believe he's anything other than the Kyuubi, you bitch. Now show yourself, cowards. So that is your answer. Hinata spoke in his ear before vanishing as he turned around again. The Chunin was in a panic now. Their growing presence showed that whomever was fucking with him were well beyond Chunin. As well, a horrible feeling of dread crept up his very soul. Hinata and Naruto began to speak together. "Oh pitiful shadow lost in the darkness. Demeaning and bringing harm to others. A damned soul wallowing in sin. Care to give death a try." The words flowed from the two without their own knowledge of how or why. However, as a shroud of darkness began to cover the clearing, clarity shined within them both. This was their first step upon the path of divinity. Judgment. Hinata and Naruto floated across from each other on both sides of Mizuki. Their eyes shined as if in their divine forms, yet their power didn't exceed that. Mizuki could feel his sins crawling on his back and he couldn't fight any longer. He wasn't strong enough to face the reality of his karma. He dropped to his knees and howled into the darkness. The divine duo created two scythes each. Hinata's was made of light while Naruto's darkness. In the next instance, they passed Mizuki, a clear X appearing over his torso. The X created tendrils of light and darkness that began to dig into his skin like leeches. His howls were stunted as everything that was Mizuki Toji was drained. The hand of darkness rose behind him before slamming down on him and dragging his soul to hell. The shroud of darkness faded and Naruto and Hinata once again returned to normal. "Ara, that one's free from me. Please use your abilities responsibly." Hikari's melodic voice chirped in their heads. Upon landing on the ground, the two found Mizuki's corpse laying in a small pool of blood, the X across his body, seeming to be made with two kunai. In their hands were said kunai as well. Hikari had saved them an explanation for the Hokage. "Wait, so does that mean we've unlocked a part of our divine ability?" Naruto asked. Hinata closed her eyes and attempted once more to activate her Shintensu Byakugan. She failed again, however, she could feel just a small bit of divine energy within her. It didn't cause a burst like before. "Hi, Naruto-kun. I believe we can try to use a little now." Soon enough, the Anbu arrived and were about to arrest Naruto, however, Hinata stopped them. Iruka came out as well, saying he had arrived just as Naruto and Hinata had confronted Mizuki. From his perspective, Mizuki attacked Hinata and Naruto, and the two fought back valiantly, ultimately ending the traitor's life. It all happened within the span of a few seconds. They were escorted back to the Hokage's tower where he confirmed Iruka's story, and the two were congratulated for stopping a traitor. The Hokage would give them credit and pay for a B-rank mission. Afterward, they went to Ichiraku's with Iruka and returned home expeditiously. "It's been one hell of a day," Naruto called as he stood with Hinata in front of her in Kurenai's apartment. She whispered while looking down. Her hands were behind her back and she leaned against the door. Naruto rose an eyebrow. "Is everything okay, Hinaheim?" Hinata sighed. "Naruto-kun, things are going to get more hectic for us from here on out. And being ninja, our lives are already finite. I understand that we'll most likely have time in the afterlife, but..." The blonde knew where she was going. He smiled sadly, placing a hand on the girl's cheeks and gently making her look him in the eyes. "Hinata-heim, would you like to be my girlfriend?" The Hyuga goddess blushed and tears entered her eyes. Naruto saw a spark of the shy and sweet girl from the academy. She closed her eyes, a beautiful smile adorning her face. "Hi Naruto-kun. I would love to be your girlfriend." She hugged him tightly, planting her lips to his own. The small divine energy they had unlocked flared within them, causing a swirl of light and darkness around them. All of their emotions were laid bare to each other in that one moment. The fondness turned into love, their love something far greater. When the kiss was done, they stared into each other's eyes with a far deeper understanding than before. Naruto nuzzled his nose against Hinata's. "Good night my Tenshi. Angel. Good night my Akuma. Devil." The two retired for the night, ready to progress towards the future from then on. Much to Naruto's surprise, Hinata had knocked on his apartment door a little over an hour before they needed to leave out for the academy. The girl didn't say a word before tackling him and attempting to suck his tongue through his mouth right in the open doorway. Though they were young, they were both now technically immortal. They were ageless beings. As such, their hormones may or may not have been jump-started by them, no longer being entirely human. Naruto couldn't help the stirring in his pants as Hinata straddled one of his legs as she French kissed him for all he was worth. He felt her slowly grinding on his leg, her moans reverberating in his own throat, drawing guttural groans from the Jinchuriki. The blonde knew he couldn't allow it to proceed further. Kurenai, and possibly the whole neighborhood, would be privy to two fresh genin attempting to get a head start on the next generation. When he had gotten her calmed enough to not worry about dying from a lack of air, she informed him that Kurenai needed her to leave before her, something about keeping her assigned team a secret or some such. Hinata didn't question it, wanting more than anything to see her new boyfriend and show her love. Naruto obliged happily, having experienced a dream he was sure was planted by Shiki and Hikari. He, Hinata, and Kurama were back in the afterlife, in one of the resort-like areas, and were enjoying each other's company. Their night ended with a passionate threesome in which Naruto wasn't even sure on what to call some of the positions he dreamed about. As he suspected, Hinata and Kurama had the same dream as well. The trio all decided it best to not discuss such a thing, lest they get the urge to prematurely try it out for real. Speaking of which, weren't you going to be with Fuchan Kurama? Naruto inquired as he and Hinata made their way towards the academy hand in hand. They took note of how most of the villagers scowled at them, but they could also sense a few who were genuinely happy about them being together. The nine-tailed girl sighed. As much as I would like to stay with Miyamoto and Fu, I do still need to find a way to contact the others. I'll go back in a bit if I don't have any luck. Plus, I think Shiki and Hikari are tired of helping us so much. They've stopped answering my calls. Naruto and Hinata frowned at that. The goddesses did say they were on vacation, but had taken just a bit of time to help them through the previous night. The divine duo would need to be cautious with how they proceeded from then on. The couple ended up walking around the village for half an hour before deciding to head towards the academy. It would have been a pleasant walk if it weren't for the various glares the duo received. Naruto held Hinata's hand as frost began to form around her. Her anger was causing her powers to leak a bit, though it did have the desired effect of running the weaker-willed villagers away. The Jinchuriki found it almost comical. Still, they arrived at the academy with almost half an hour before they were scheduled. Iruka wasn't even there yet, but a few other students were. Much to their relief, none of their associated classmates were in yet. Hinata-san, Naruto-san. A word please. The divine couple jumped at being addressed as they headed towards their seats. They looked up to see Shino gazing upon them with a somewhat irritated slouch. How did we not sense him? Hinata and Naruto wondered together. They would probably chalk it up to Shino's lack of presence. For some reason Shino felt offended by the looks they were giving him. What do you want, Shino? Naruto asked a bit defensively. Shino was releasing a bit of negative energy. Though again, it was more irritation than ill intent. Your presence is causing my hive to stir greatly. What has happened to you two? He got straight to the point. Hinata smiled warmly, hoping to disarm the little hostility growing within the boy. Unfortunately, Shino-kun, that is something only the Hokage could answer. Truthfully, something did happen to me and Naruto-kun, but we are not at liberty to speak on it. Please, understand. Her answer did indeed please Shino, however, it did little to quell the restlessness of his hives. It did pique his interest even more to what may have happened to his comrades, however, he was in no hurry to confront the Hokage on such a matter. Well, for the time being, I would ask that you two remain a fair distance away from me until I can calm my hive. I mean no offense. The duo could only nod before moving to sit near the bottom of the rows. If Shino caught on, it may only be a matter of time before others wonder what's going on with us, Naruto inquired. Hinata nodded her agreement. She didn't want to deal with so many questions. However, the information was truly guarded by the Hokage. There wasn't much they could do but try to deter people as they came. Glad to see you here bright and early, Naruto. Hinata must really be a good influence on you. Iruka's jovial voice broke the small bout of tension in the room. Hinata blushed at his words while Naruto huffed but smirked anyway. Yeah. Pretty girls have guys wrapped around their fingers all the time. Guess I'm no different. Naruto shrugged, making Hinata's blush become a magnificent blow. She hid her face in her hands, mumbling about embarrassing boyfriends and senseis. Iruka chuckled at the shy girl before preparing for the arrival of the rest of the students. He frowned when he thought about the previous night. The two had taken a life, but here they were in class like nothing happened. Even worse, he couldn't even praise them like they deserved due to the Hokage making the event an A-class secret. Others could learn of the incident through the grapevine, but most would surely not believe two academy students stopped a Chunin traitor. Even more so than that, he wondered how they were faring with their first kill. Though they were technically officially genin, they were still his students if only for a little while longer. He worried for them, especially Naruto. He noticed a change in both of the genin and couldn't help but think they were simply hiding their real feelings. Unfortunately, he wouldn't be able to talk to the duo as the class began to fill with students. Naruto and Hinata remained seated next to each other, gaining several odd glances from the few students that noticed. Once again, Sasuke and Sakura were a bit surprised at the blonde not bothering either of them. Wait, did that baka finally realize Hinata had feelings for him? Guess losers of a feather flock together. Sakura grinned. Now he'll finally stop bugging me and I can focus on winning over Sasuke-kun. Bitch, you're going down. Though she thought that, a small tiny itty-bitty part of Sakura lamented that Naruto may have gotten over her. Speaking of, the blonde mind walker sat next to Sasuke on the other side of Sakura, yet she made no move to truly acknowledge either of them. She seemed sleepy and teetered as if falling asleep where she sat. Naruto noticed and nudged Hinata to glance at the girl. The ex-Hyuga subtly activated her Byakugan. In the next instant, Naruto paled as a spike of killing intent flooded the room. It was literally only an instant as it disappeared right after. Everyone looked around as a chill had gone down their spines and dread had entered them all. Iruka looked around as well, the color slowly returning to his face as he looked about. Could that have been Hokage-sama? Did something happen? He wondered idly. Noticing the looks of his students, he quickly recomposed himself and cleared his throat, hopefully to calm the agitated class down. After waiting for the class to settle a bit, Naruto tapped the pale-eyed girl next to him. He could see she was still seething a little, though her naturally calming aura prevented her ire from rising from what it already was. Hinata-chan, what happened? What did you see? I sense something different about Ino but not much from yesterday. It's been upgraded, Naruto-kun. The seal on her. She's barely conscious right now. Can't you feel it draining her stamina? Naruto frowned and focused on the girl. Hinata grabbed his hand, knowing that if her reaction was bad, Naruto would probably blow up the room. As soon as he could feel the platinum blonde's energy, Naruto's mind froze for a moment. He felt Kurama within him roar in anger as well. Just before his anger could burst free from his soul, Hinata's calming aura reeled him in. He gripped her hand and clenched it hard, making the girl flinch, but she smiled nonetheless. It'll be okay, Naruto-kun. We can do something about her sooner or later. Remember what Shiki-sama said about your Shimirigan. If it can seal just by looking, it should be able to alter or remove seals as well. That's true, Hinata-chan, but we don't know how long it will be before we can even use our new Dijutsu, let alone being able to do something like that. We need to keep a close eye on her. Maybe one of us will be on her team or something. Though Ino wasn't a friend to either teens, honestly being something closer to an enemy, they knew something was happening to the girl that was completely unjust. They didn't want to just sit by while someone was obviously aiming to harm the girl in some way. Luckily for them, they were able to process dozens of scenarios where they could help the girl. However, their planning was cut short abruptly as several jonin entered the room and Iruka moved to stand before them. The class added attention, all eager to see whom their sensei would be, even the two godly genin. As Iruka read out the first few teams, their interest perked up at the sixth team. Team 6 will be Biggs Darklighter, Wedge Antilles, and Ami Kagure. Your jonin sensei will be Jesse Avalanche. I'm so sorry. Biggs was a somewhat tall and lanky teen, while Wedge was short and stocky, almost as much so as Chouji. Their sensei was a very pretty woman with brown eyes and brown hair pulled back into a ponytail. She had a hand on her hip and gave her team a thumbs up. Alright, let's go. 7th Heaven is having half-off wings until noon, and I don't want to miss it. The entire class sweat dropped, but Ami rose her hand. Sensei, 7th Heaven doesn't allow minors inside. Jessie shook her head, her ponytail flailing cutely, getting blushes from most of the students and even a few of the other jonin. You're shinobi in Kunoichi now. That rule no longer applies to you. I'll explain once we get there, so let's go. The trio shrugged before following her. Iruka looked after them with a mild hint of amusement. Okay then. Team 7 will be Sakura Haruno, Sasuke-cha. Yes. In your face, bitches. Sakura leaped from her seat and threw up both of her middle fingers at the class around her. Most girls grumbled at her while Ino finally looked alert. She realized what was happening and slammed a palm on the desk in front her. What the hell? That's so unfair. Her energy seemed to fall again, however, as she slumped back into her seat with a huff. Pouting worked just as well. As Sakura did a victory dance, much to Sasuke's mild annoyance and slight amusement, Iruka continued. And your last teammate will be Naruto Uzumaki. The class froze, along with Sakura in the middle of a weird pose during her dance. Ino was the first to break the silence with a snicker. Sucks to be you, forehead. You get the dead last. Sakura's head hit the desk and shook the room. Why? Why give me the best hunk of greatness just to give an equally if not more so worse piece of pathetic shit-stained garbage? Kami-sama, you cruel bitch. Naruto had to restrain Hinata from leaping over the desk and showing Sakura just how cruel Kami truly was. Insult Naruto-kun and Hikari-sama. That bitch is dead. Hinata settled for shooting death glares at the back of Sakura's head while Naruto held her. It proved enough as Sakura paled again, feeling the same kai from earlier seeming to focus on her a bit, like needles rapidly pricking her entire back. She noted never to insult Kami again. Your jonin sensei will be Kakashi Haddock, who will be here later, much later, Iruka thought with a sigh. Though a part of him felt Sakura deserved to wait for her outburst. Knowing the silver-haired jonin, his students had at least another 3-hour wait. Naruto and Hinata both sighed. They knew it was only a small chance that they'd be on each other's teams. Though they figured after the previous incident the Hokage would be inclined to put them together, they realized the teams were probably made to balance the genin's potential. Naruto had truly been the dead last due to his grades throughout the entirety of the academy. Just because he aced the graduation test didn't make up for 4 years of previous failure. It still sucked though. Teammate will be Kiba Inuzuka, Shino Aburam, and Hinata Hyuga. Your jonin sensei will be Kurina Yuhi. Several things went through the ex-heiress's mind. 1. She didn't know how to feel about her teammates. Shino was showing signs of slight hostility, while Kiba still exuded a small aura of lust. She caught the Inuzuka's gaze for a moment, seeing a confident smirk on his face, and she knew he would be showing his alpha soon. Shino seemed uncomfortable if the slight fidgeting he was doing was anything. 2. She caught the gaze of her sensei and saw the small smirk on her face. She knew before she had kicked Hinata out about her team. Hinata just smirked back and shook her head at her sensei's antics. 3. She was upset that neither her nor Naruto would be on Ino's team to keep an eye on her. That last fact made her worry for the platinum blonde. "We'll figure this out, Hinata-chan," Naruto whispered to her. She gave his hand a squeeze beneath the desk and nodded with a warm smile. "Hi, I know Naruto-kun." She gave him a small kiss on his cheek, much to the entire class's shock, as she stood to follow Kurenai out the door alongside her new teammates. A glare and a snarl from Kiba was the only reaction that changed as the Inyazuka left out. "Beshestigudfree on Narutokov." Hiruka coughed into his hand. His response was a middle finger from his favorite blonde. "Anyway, Team 9 is still in rotation from last year. Team 10 will be Shikamaru Nara, Ino Yamanaka, and Choji Akimichi. Your Jonin sensei will be Asuma Sarutobi." The bearded Jonin stepped forward and gave a two-finger salute. "Hey. I'm agreeing with that Jessie lady. Let's head to 7th Heaven and grab some food while we get to know each other, my treat." "Sound good. Greatest sensei ever." Choji shouted and grabbed Ino and Shikamaru before moving so fast, one would think he had recreated the Hiraishin. Asuma blinked at the empty spaces where his students used to be. "Wait, you didn't say Akimichi, did you?" he asked Iruka. Iruka's devious grin returned and he nodded. "Rip Asuma's wallet." He put his hands together in the prayer position. The rest of the class followed suit, making the bearded Jonin pale. "What have I done?" he lamented as he slowly moved towards the door, akin to a zombie. Iruka finished up with the last few teams before leaving Team 7 alone in the room. He knew better than to wait for Kakashi. He'd return in a few hours to lock up. "Sasuke-kun, we not interested," Sasuke said with such finality that it actually made the Pinket flinch. There was a brief moment of silence with Naruto actually feeling a bit sorry for the girl once he saw the downtrodden look on her face. It didn't last as she suddenly grimaced and whipped her head towards Naruto. "Hey Baka. You better make sure to not drag me and Sasuke-kun down." Part of the Uzumaki wanted to retort and rip the girl a new as big as her forehead. The other part of him that was sad to truly realize that his crush on her would have never been returned wanted to at least be cordial with her. However, a new part of him felt that she was so insignificant at the moment that acknowledging her would actually cause a monumental cataclysmic event to occur that could endanger thousands upon thousands of lives. He blinked before shrugging and simply leaning back and taking a meditative position. "Baka, I'm speaking to you." Sakura called angrily at being ignored. Sasuke's annoyance was growing as well, but his curiosity at the blonde not doting over the Pinket was honestly a bit greater. He glanced back to see the Jinchuriki seeming to meditate and cursed his own inability to find inner peace so easily. Then he remembered it was Naruto he was thinking of and wondered if he hadn't just fallen asleep, which wasn't such a bad idea truthfully. "Naruto-san." Naruto spoke calmly with his eyes still closed. Both of his teammates froze a bit at his tone. "I understand that you hate me. I understand that I was a nuisance constantly asking you out and trying to get close to you. So I'm going to do my best to give you your wishes. I will only interact with you during missions and team exercises. We don't need to pretend to be friends or like each other. However, I ask that you at least extend me the same courtesy and not engage with me unless we're with our sensei." "The same to you, Ichiha-san." Swirls entered the Pinket's eyes and Sasuke's jaw dropped. "Wha? What do you when did you?" Sakura's mind seemed to crash as Naruto articulated a well-spoken response to her screeching. Sasuke was having flashbacks to Iruka's lectures and wondered if Naruto wasn't a hinge of said teacher. After a moment, both genin seemed to calm and actually process what Naruto had said to them. When they looked at him, he held their gazes with a serious glare, letting them know he was dead serious and was awaiting a response, or in this case, a confirmation to his request. "Don't try to act all cool. I don't know what you're playing at, but you'll never be as cool as Sasuke-kun." Sasuke didn't respond immediately. He saw the darkening look in Naruto's eye and swallowed a lump in his throat. After a moment of holding each other's gaze, Sasuke was the first to look away with a small grunt. "Fine with me. Sasuke-kun." Sakura was floored that he agreed with something the blonde said. Seeing Sasuke's glare and wanting to avoid Naruto's own, she instead did the impossible, sat quietly until their sensei arrived. "At least a team can be rational when need be, it seems. Though I wish Sakura-chan wasn't such a fangirl. She'll end up hurt or worse once we have actual missions." Naruto groaned and face-palmed. "Fuck me, I'm going to have to try to befriend her and help her get stronger if I want this team to make it at all. This Kakashi douchebag probably won't help seeing as he doesn't even have the decency to show up on time to meet his team. Trouble in paradise, Naruto-kun." Fu's voice in his head made Naruto jump. "Fu? How are you in the castle?" The giggle was heard before "I'm letting Chime-chan take control of my body for now as an apology." Her voice became somber towards the end of her sentence. There was a brief silence before he felt her energy return. Anyway, you should come here when you get a chance. Kurama-sama says she wants to try reaching out to another of her siblings. I'm going to let Hinata-chan know in a bit too. Naruto found it awesome he could communicate with Fu, even though they were who knows how many miles apart. He smiled to himself, feeling like his life was only going to continue to get more awesome as time went on. Alright, I'll try to be there after I finish meeting with my team whenever Maeva-sensei gets here. Ouch. Sounds rough. Anyway, see you soon. Fu's presence faded from his mind. The whiskered teen sighed once more before looking at his teammates. Sasuke was in his usual brooding pose, while Sakura seemed to be deep in thought. Before his mind could drift to other topics, the door to the room opened. In stepped a fairly tall man with gravity-defying gray hair. The infamous copycat ninja, Kakashi Haddock, took his first look at all three of his students and wasn't impressed. "Are you our sensei?" Sakura asked hesitantly. The cycloptic ninja smiled and nodded. "Hi. I'm." Before he could finish, a textbook found its new home in his face, knocking the man flat on his back courtesy of the pinkette. "You're late you 3 whole fucking hours." Naruto and Sasuke were shocked by the girl's outburst, but couldn't help but mentally applaud the girl for doing what they would have done under other circumstances. "Nah, Haruno-san. Please don't kill our sensei before we get a chance to learn anything from him, regardless of how much he deserves it," Naruto deadpanned as he began to move towards their presumably dead teacher. Sakura just glared at Naruto but to his surprise, didn't say anything in retaliation. What type of sensei can't dodge a book anyway? She instead addressed the missing body of their sensei. "Wait, where? My first impression is that I hate you all." Kakashi sat in a windowsill of the classroom, orange book in hand. "Now, meet me on the roof in 5 minutes for introductions." With his words, he vanished in a small swirl of leaves. Substitution, Sasuke mumbled before standing to leave as well. A few minutes later found the trio of genin on the roof with Kakashi before them, nose still buried within his choice of literature. Silence permeated the air as the genin awaited their sensei to speak, the tension growing with every passing second. Naruto and Sasuke both began to grit their teeth at the man's lackadaisical demeanor. Of course, with their pink-haired teammate having the shortest temper of all, it didn't take long before. "For the love of Kami, will you please do your job?" Slowly and silently, Kakashi closed his book and looked at his students with an eye smile. "Alright then, let's do introductions." Both Naruto and Sasuke had to hold Sakura back as she began to foam at the mouth, trying her best to strangle the man. The copycat ninja didn't seem to notice or care. "I'll start. My name is Kakashi Haddock. My likes are too mature for you, and my dislikes are too bloody for you. My dreams for the future are none of your business. Now you, Pinky. All you told us was your name." So? The genin finally gave up. He had bested them already. Truly a magnificent and dangerous sensei. "My name is Sakura Haruno," the pinkette began dejectedly. "My likes are." She perked up as heart suddenly entered her eyes and she glanced at Sasuke. The action didn't go missed by anyone and Naruto instinctively moved slightly in front of Sasuke as to protect his chastity. The raven-haired nin silently gave thanks to his blonde teammate. "My dislikes are Ino Pig, Naruto Baka, perverts and now you lazy piece of Sakura." Naruto called. "What? I'm only talking about Kakashi-sensei." "Oh, we can dig it." Another silence. "My dreams for the future is to marry a strong and mysterious clan heir." Sakura giggled while once again sending not so inconspicuous glances at the duck-haired shinobi. This time Sasuke actively hid behind Naruto. Kakashi sighed and noted that Sakura had no aspirations and would definitely need to have the fangirl beat out of her. "Next, duck butt." Kakashi addressed Sasuke. The teen glared at the nickname but spoke anyway. "My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I have few likes and many dislikes. I have an ambition, not a dream. To kill a certain man." Naruto frowned at that. Though he didn't like Sasuke much, the two had a strained friendship some years ago that ended after the Uchiha clan massacre. Naruto knew Sasuke was referring to his elder brother, Itachi Uchiha. To have such hatred inside Naruto could literally feel Sasuke's anger and his anguish. His aura radiated so many emotions, ones that the raven-haired boy never showed before. "I think I understand you a little, Sasuke. Is this part of Shiki-sama's powers?" Even Sakura didn't dote over the boy at his words. She took a moment, just like she did in the classroom, to actually think of her teammates. "That's why I like Sasuke-kun, but his dream is a bit scary." "The last loyal Uchiha," Kakashi mused. "But is he loyal to the village or to his clan?" "Last but maybe least, Mr. Sunshine." The blonde shrugged at the nickname. "My name is Naruto Uzumaki na." Though his teammates missed his slip, Kakashi most certainly didn't. His lone visible eye narrowed for a fraction of a second. "My likes are Hinata-chan, my friends, Raymond, and training, in that order." Though Raymond and training might be tied now, he trailed off, getting sweat drops from his team. "My dislikes are those who prey on the innocent, rapists, etc. You know, the general scum of the earth. People who judge others without getting to know them and anyone that would harm those I care about. A small leak of Kai actually made his two teammates shiver. Kakashi just noted that the boy seemed to be hiding quite a bit of potential. My dreams no, my goals for the future are to be with the people I love and the people who deserve it and to live up to my family legacy. Everyone was shocked that Naruto didn't mention becoming Hokage. Even more so, Sasuke and Sakura were confused about that last part. He sped past the part about ending lives and his team honestly missed it. Family legacy? What do you mean dope? Sasuke asked, genuinely interested. He had always thought Naruto was clanless, or at least, from a lesser clan that wasn't part of Konoha. He didn't truly give it much thought. Yeah, aren't you clanless, Naruto? Sakura corrected herself. This also surprised Naruto and Sasuke. The blonde shook his head at her question. I found out that the Uzumaki were a clan. A powerful one at that. So powerful, actually, that they helped found Konoha. Haven't you two heard of Mito Uzumaki? Their eyes widened at the name. The first Hokage's wife was in Uzumaki. How could we overlook that? Sakura slapped her forehead. Wait, so you're related to the first Hokage too? Sasuke asked. Kakashi just listened to his students, filing away the information for now. He wanted to see how much Naruto actually knew. And how he knew to begin with. I don't think so. I believe Mito may have just been a relative. My direct family came to Konoha when the third Hokage had just started his reign. My mother was Kushina Uzumaki. Naruto looked at Kakashi, their eyes meeting. The message was clear to the Jonin. He knows. Kushina, I don't think I heard that name before. Sakura pondered. For the better. Naruto started. She died during the Kyuubi attack the day I was born. Sakura gasped, her hands covering her mouth. Sasuke just grit his teeth. My family was murdered, but the dope didn't even get to know his, then he paused. What about your father? Or any other family? Naruto was surprised Sasuke actually seemed to care. My father is classified. Naruto started. I know who he is, but he was a powerful shinobi with lots of enemies. He also died when the Kyuubi attacked though. A powerful ninja that's classified. Who before Sakura could continue, Kakashi cleared his throat. That's a lot to take in Naruto. How did you find out about these things? Hokage let me read some of the books he has in his office. I don't think he meant to leave this one on his desk, but it was the history of Uzushiogakure, the village of Werlul. Sakura questioned. Naruto nodded. My clan's home village. Destroyed by those afraid of what they didn't understand. Another wave of Kai had them shivering, yet both Sakura and Sasuke couldn't help but sympathize with the Jinchuriki. However, before they could ask any more questions, Kakashi changed the subject. Well, it's nice to know about your heritage, Naruto, but today we're here to start your own legacies. His words didn't immediately make the genin focus. Both Sakura and Sasuke wanted to ask more questions, starting to see the blonde in a different light. The Jinchuriki knew what Kakashi was doing though and decided it best his teammates don't keep grilling him for information. He had probably shared too much as is. And again, even if the Dobe's from a clan, he's still a Dobe, Sasuke thought, somewhat half-heartedly. The Baka isn't clanless, but he's still no Uchiha. Inner Sakura squealed. For some reason Naruto felt as if he had taken 2 steps forward and 1 step back with his teammates. So for starters, you 3 aren't really genin yet. Kakashi stated, getting confused looks in return. What do you mean, Kakashi-sensei? Sakura asked. Kakashi expected a bigger reaction from the 3. I mean, there's one more test. The test at the academy was just to weed out those who have no potential to become shinobi whatsoever. Tomorrow, you will take a test that has a 66% rate of failure. If you fail, you'll be sent back to the academy. Sakura paled while Sasuke grit his teeth. Naruto simply rolled his eyes. He wasn't underestimating whatever Kakashi had in store for them. He didn't know if he could actually take the Jonin on. But if it was simply a test to see if they were ready to be genin, he knew they would have little problem. Plus, with Sakura and Sasuke seeming to not be complete they would probably. You better not hold us back, Dobe. Sasuke spoke without even looking at Naruto. Yeah, Baka. You've got a long way to go to make your clan proud. Sakura's insult wasn't as harsh as usual, but it still pissed the blonde off a little. Maybe he shouldn't have told them so much after all. Kakashi sighed at his students. So much for teamwork. Looks like this'll be another failure. The Cycloptic Nin stood and waved at the trio. We'll have the test tomorrow at training ground 6. Be there by 6 AM and don't eat anything. You'll definitely end up throwing up. With his words, he left via Shunshin. Sasuke and Naruto both immediately got up and began to head in opposite directions. Sakura was left baffled for a moment, looking between them. Part of her was going to instantly run after Sasuke, however, another part of her was surprised Naruto didn't even say bye to her or them. Totally them. Did finding out about his family really change him that much? Is that why he and Hinata seem so close now? Sakura grimaced at the thought. She didn't like Naruto and cared little for Hinata. But for some reason, Naruto not groveling to her felt wrong. In her musings she had already lost sight of both boys and sighed in defeat. With nothing else to do, she decided to head home herself. Hinata was almost at wit's end. As soon as they left the classroom, Kiba had sauntered up to her and attempted to flirt. Usually, Kiba would only give throwaway comments here or there and not mean anything. However, now he was brazenly getting in Hinata's personal space and generally being a little too handsy. A quick glare from their sensei as they walked through town was enough to deter him. Kurenai looked to Hinata and knew if Kiba had persisted for much longer, the seemingly shy girl herself may have actually snapped. Shino himself walked closer to Kurenai and as far from Hinata as possible without seeming rude. He still appeared agitated by her presence, but not so much as it was with both her and Naruto. He had even spoken to her a bit, letting her know his hive was still a bit restless, but they should be able to work together fine. She could tell he was biting his tongue on asking why her aura caused his bugs to stir to begin with, but remembered that it was a Hokage-bound secret. For now, he would hope that he and Hinata's relationship would become amicable enough for them to share certain secrets and perhaps find a way to calm his hive. Kurenai led the group to a small bakery with a sit-down area. It was a place Anko showed her a while ago that she didn't want to admit that she had gotten addicted to. As soon as the door opened, the smell of cinnamon and freshly baked bread wafted out. The lady at the counter greeted her with familiarity, but then froze as she saw who was with her. "Hey Kurenai-san, please tell me you didn't just bring a Hyuga in here." The clerk was trembling. "What? Yes, of course. This is my new genin squad and we were going to spend some time together here." Kurenai answered, a bit put off by the woman's reaction. Was she discriminating against the Hyuga? She turned to see how her students were handling the situation and paused in shock. Kiba and Shino were standing several feet away from Hinata as the girl herself had her hair covering her eyes and a heavy pressure building around her. Hinata. Kurenai tentatively called. "Sai cinnamon buns, cinnamon rolls, cinnamon bread." So much Hinata's trembling seemed to worsen as her voice came out broken. Kiba took another step back as Akamaru whimpered in his jacket. Sensei. Kurenai-san, most Hyugas have a pastry addiction, borderline fetish." The clerk shouted and began to run to the back of the store. The Jonin was still confused. She was worried about her lone female student and thought the clerk had to be exaggerating. "Cinnamon, cinnamon, cinnamon." Hinata shouted as her eyes flashed white. Before anyone knew what was happening, the glass shattered on all the display cases. A white aura covered Hinata, bellowing around her like a maelstrom. Kiba and Shino were both knocked off their feet while Kurenai skidded back, slamming into a few tables. The Jonin's eyes widened as she felt the power rolling off of Hinata. The red-eyed woman was speechless and honestly terrified. She hadn't felt an aura that oppressive since the third Hokage found out Naruto replaced his favorite brand of nicotine with shredded gum. Before her very eyes, Hinata vanished. The aura in the room also vanished. Kurenai heard a scream in the back of the store and saw that the door had been blown off its hinges. "Kiba, Shino, are you two alright?" The boys coughed but gave their acknowledgements at not being seriously injured. She nodded and tentatively looked around. To her shock, everything that seemed to be cinnamon-based was missing. The smell of cinnamon was even gone from the air itself. A dread entered her stomach as she looked towards the back room. She slowly made her way over, drawing a kunai out of habit. "Hinata, are you in there? Are you okay?" As she stepped over broken glass and shattered tables, pastries and other foodstuffs fell from the ceiling. The entire store looked as if an exploding tag had gone off inside of it. Every crunch beneath her feet made the Jonin's anxiety grow. When she reached the door, she slowly peeked her head inside, hearing slurping and moaning. Her eyes widened as she saw Hinata with the female clerk pinned beneath her. The woman looked terrified and tears streamed down her cheeks. Hinata sat on her stomach, holding a cinnamon bun that was dripping with cinnamon glaze. The girl licked at the bun as the cinnamon dripped down her chin and onto her heaving chest. Her cheeks were flushed pink and her eyes were as glazed as the roll. Cinnamon covered the clerk as well, her work shirt ripped to reveal an ample amount of her cleavage covered in the cinnamon. When Hinata had devoured the cinnamon bun in her hand, she sucked on her fingers to clean them of the glaze. Each digit popped as she slurped them spotless. Then she leaned over and began to suck the cinnamon from the clerk's skin, getting whimpers of both fright and pleasure from her. The genin's tongue lapped up the light glaze that curved with the woman's mounds, and she puckered her lips as she slurped the sugar that pooled between her, right in her cleavage. Kurenai was frozen in place as she watched the scene, her own cheeks burning red, yet her eyes being unable to look away. Soon enough, her eyes met the clerk's, and the woman's gaze was pleading, "Help me." It was too late, however, as Hinata went lower and took one of the woman's into her mouth. The woman's back arched and her eyes rolled to the back of her head as Hinata used chakra on her tongue to ensure she didn't miss a drop of cinnamon. A pool of liquid spread beneath the woman from under her skirt and her tongue fell out of her mouth as she seemed to pass out. Satisfied that she had gotten all of the cinnamon off the woman, Hinata leaned up. A trickle of cinnamon was on the corner of her mouth and Kurenai swore she saw milk as well. The girl giggled and licked her lips before gazing around for another meal. Hinata. Kurenai finally shouted, snapping out of her own state of shock. Beep. Hinata jumped from the shout. She looked around, the light returning to her eyes, and she froze. Oh no, her eyes slowly shifted to the woman beneath her who had a face of sheer ecstasy. Oh no, oh no, oh no, I did it again. Hinata cried and quickly leaped from the woman, preparing to run from the store. Again? Hinata, what is going on? Kurenai caught the girl as she attempted to run past her. Hinata was crying, but Kurenai refused to let her go. This curse. The curse of delicious melty cinnamon. I can't escape it, Kurenai-sensei. Hinata cried. Kurenai was still baffled but knew for a fact that she would need to rid her entire house of anything cinnamon-based. After consoling the girl for a bit, Kurenai led her Jenin out of the shop, leaving money to pay for the food and the damages for whenever the clerk woke up. She sighed, knowing she was going to have to give a formal apology to the establishment. But first, she needed to figure out what the hell had just happened to Hinata. Even Shino and Kiba were walking a fair distance away from her now, both shooting scared glances her way. So seventh heaven then? Kurenai called in exasperation, getting vigorous nods from both Shino and Kiba and whimper from the lone Hyuga. Son of a mother bitch. A scream was followed by a small explosion. A dust cloud rose into the air, drifting off into the distance, past a pagoda that stood proudly within the collective mindscape. Is it really that serious, Kurama-sama? Fu asked as she stood almost 24 meters away from Kurama and the considerable-sized crater she had created just by stomping her foot. The dark-skinned Biju groaned in frustration. About 100 meters in front of her stood a wall of whipping wind and sand. A desert biome gate that was closer than ever now that she knew housed her youngest sister, Shukaku. The sandstorm that raged had suddenly gotten worse that morning, and Kurama knew something must have happened to her sister and/or her Jinchuriki. I'm free to do what I want, but until I can regain at least my full strength and then some, I can't reach out to the others I don't understand. You and Chimei Yamato were easy enough to contact. Shukaku is closer than you guys are, but I can't even get her seal to appear. Either they have a sealing master even greater than the 4th Hokage, which is extremely unlikely, or she and her Jinchuriki have been being put under increasing duress for a long time. She knew it to be the latter. Though she couldn't contact her sibling, she could feel the anger and pain from her position outside the biome. The tiny redhead could only imagine what she must be going through, or even worse, putting her Jinchuriki through. Unfortunately, she knew that herself, Naruto, and Hinata weren't yet strong enough to breach the seal and barrier as it was. Even if she were at full strength, she wouldn't be able to bypass the seal with Shukaku in such a state. Initially she had hoped that Chimei and Fu could help, but it turned out that as long as Chimei was still sealed within Fu, she could not access all of her powers within the shared mindscape. Even more so, Fu and Chimei could only activate one tail of their cloak together due to Fu's previous disposition on the Biju. Kurama tried to hide it, but she was absolutely worried for Shukaku. The Biju's emotions were always volatile since she was the weakest of the tailed beast. She hated to admit that she had never been there for Shukaku like she should have either. The youngest Biju had grown angry at her siblings and had been the first to go off attacking humans simply because they were weaker than her. Tears entered the small Biju's eyes as the wall of sand and wind proved to be a barrier that not only separated her and her sibling physically, but a representation of the emotional barrier between them too. Kurama-sama. Fu approached the smaller girl as she saw her shoulders begin to shake. She heard a sniffle and felt her stomach drop. Never would she have thought the great Kyuubi would be crying. It's fine. Just give me a moment. A moment was all she needed. She regained her composure swiftly and gave one last forlorn look at the barrier to Shukaku. Hold on just a bit longer, Yamato, I'll come for you. Kurama thought resolutely before turning and motioning Fu to follow her back to the castle. As the duo walked away, they would miss the storm subside for just a moment. When the duo made it back to the castle, Hinata and Naruto were just arriving at the same time. They were about to greet them until they saw Hinata run to a corner and pull her knees to her chest, a dark cloud forming over her. Hinata-chan, is everything okay? Naruto asked the gloomy girl. She shook her head without turning around. I'm a deviant, Naruto-kun. I'm impure. The temptation of cinnamon is just too powerful. Run. Run before I attack you too. Naruto, Fu, and Kurama sweat dropped at the girl's words. The dark cloud above her grew and they could feel her despair and embarrassment. Naruto approached the brooding girl and got on his knees behind her, pulling her into his chest much to her shock. Hinata-chan, whatever happened can't be that bad. How did your meeting with your team go? The ex-Hyuga relaxed in his arms for a moment, but the memories of her meeting with her team made her shiver in depression. However, the thoughts of what happened in the bakery made her shiver in slight excitement as well. Feeling Naruto's arms around her, she couldn't help but revel in the thought of Naruto pinning her down and licking cinnamon from her bare chest. A strong feeling of lust burst from the girl and hit Naruto completely. His eyes widened and the blush that adorned his face made the room glow. Fu and Kurama felt it as well. The mint-haired Jinchuriki was a bit mortified, but Kurama licked her lips and had to hold herself back from jumping the two in front of her. What the hell was that? Fu asked as she rubbed her thighs together. Looks like this place is still unstable. Kurama answered, holding herself together better than Fu, though the hungry look in her eyes was starting to become dangerous. Since this technically is still a conjoined mindscape, your inner thoughts and feelings are capable of being physically projected. Fu blanched. Isn't that dangerous? Not for us. We all pretty much share in most feelings already anyway. The mint-haired Jinchuriki scratched her cheek, her blush solidifying. Sounds kinky, she muttered. Hearing what was said, Hinata shook her head and tried to calm down. She turned in Naruto's grip and hugged him tightly. It doesn't matter for now, Naruto-kun. She pulled away and gave him a quick kiss on the lips, much to his and Fu's embarrassment and Kurama's slight amusement, yet longing. What did you want to talk about, Kurama? The red-haired Bijuu sobered up at remembering her failed attempt at contacting her youngest sister. I was hoping you two would be able to help me break the barrier on my sister Shukaku. She's not doing hot if that sandstorm is any indication. Unfortunately, I'm not strong enough to do it alone yet. But seeing how strong the barrier is, I'm not sure you two could help either now. The divine duo gave each other worried glance before immediately standing and agreeing to help. Naruto gave his fox-like grin, hoping to ease the Bijuu's worries. Don't worry, Kurama. We'll definitely save her and the other Bijuu too. Though she was starting to warm up to the blonde on a deep level, she couldn't help but not find his smile comforting this one time. His confidence was usually infectious, but the nagging feeling in her gut told her this wasn't so simple. Hinata took note of the look and frowned. Though she wanted to be as confident as Naruto, even she wasn't so sure. She was starting to realize something very important. They had no idea how to use their abilities. Regardless, the group remained silent as they followed Kurama back to the desert gate that held Shukaku. The whipping sandstorm seemed to have gotten worse since they had just left. What the hell is going on in there, Kurama whined, her heart aching at the sight. Alright, so what do we need to do? Naruto asked, not being deterred by the impenetrable wall of sand and wind. We need attempt to bring forth the seal. Then we'll need to decode it and reverse it, effectively unsealing it. If this was the physical world, something like this would be painful and probably life-threatening. Since this isn't a part of the real world, it won't be painful to the Jinchuriki or Bijuu. However, that makes actually getting the physical seal to appear within this mindscape is even harder, especially since they're so far away. Hinata nodded her understanding, but it only made her worry grow. Can you tell where they are? Your sister and her Jinchuriki? Kurama shook her head. I have a general direction based upon the location of the biome, but not a clear distance or coordinate. She's somewhere to the southwest. Not far right now, but it's also closer than usual as well. Closer than usual? Fu asked. The Bijuu nodded once more. I've noticed if you guys are on the move, your biome shifts. Shukaku's has moved the most, but it remains in the southwest. I've noticed a huge biome to the northeast that shifts and occasionally splits in two. I think two of my siblings are together or at least really close. The ex-Hyuga seemed to ponder her words for a moment. However, she paled in realization and shook her head. Fu noticed and placed a hand on her shoulder. Is everything okay? Hinata gave a minute look of thanks to the girl for her worry, but smiled to ease the tension. Yes, it's fine. I was thinking of places that I know in each of those directions. It's safe to say Shukaku must be either in the land of rivers or the land of wind. Both of those are southwest of Fire Country where we reside. Though, if there is a sandstorm, it's like the land of wind Suna village. Fu rose an eyebrow. Isn't Suna deep in wind country? That's way past the land of rivers. Didn't you say she was close, Kurama-sama? Yeah, but whoever they are could be on a mission. Just like with the two who are to the northwest. She pointed to back towards the castle, and in the sky far beyond the tallest pagoda, they could see a large mountain and storm clouds. I can't reach that. Once I get even halfway there, the storm gets so bad that I just can't traverse it. It's too far to get to through the spirit realm as well. Hinata once again paled, this time not being missed by anyone. Their concern collectively hit the girl in the mindscape and she looked around at the worried faces in shame. Hinata-chan, Naruto started. The ex-Hyuga moved to him and embraced him. I'm sorry. It's just, I know for a fact what village is in that direction. It's far away, and there's even a few smaller countries separating us. Naruto was confused as she seemed to shiver in his arms. It reminded a little too much of the shy and meek Hinata she had been not too long ago. The confidence that she radiated recently was nowhere to be found. Hinata, talk to us. He whispered into her ear as he rubbed her back and stroked her hair. She didn't respond right away. She simply enjoyed his comforting gestures and hummed into his chest as she did her best not to cry from remembering the past. Fu and Kurama stood silently. Fu felt a little out of place, but Kurama was split between her worry for Hinata and her worry for Shukaku. The village in that direction is in the land of lightning. the hidden cloud village, Kumagakure. Naruto racked his brain to remember why that was familiar, and then remembered several years prior where Hinata had been absent from school for several weeks. It was around the time the third Hokage had told him to be on his best behavior and to stay away from the Hokage building at all costs. Being the naive and curious child he was, Naruto snuck in anyway and saw dark-skinned people for the first time in his life. He didn't know what to think of the weirdly dressed people at first, being more curious about what type of raiment they had, where they came from, than anything else. Eventually, he got bored of not understanding what the people were discussing with the Hokage and snuck away. However, he did remember that the Hokage was absolutely furious for a long while afterwards. At first, he thought he was mad at him because the Hokage had stopped speaking with Naruto altogether for the weeks that Hinata was also missing from class. The few times he had tried to talk to the Hokage, he remembered him talking about cloud rats and sacrificing Hyuga. His eyes widened as he began to understand the story before Hinata could even tell it. "When I was a child, I was almost kidnapped by Kumagakure," she explained. To their shock, the area around them began to change. They appeared in what looked like a traditional Japanese mansion. Even Hinata was shocked as she looked around at her old bedroom. "Wait, this is," Hinata began, but the scene began to play. It detailed everything, from Hinata studying happily to the moment a shrouded person entered her room and gagged her. Most of the scene faded to black with only choppy voices here or there being heard. However, a single moment brought animosity out of the three observers as they heard a confirmation that she was still pure. The tears that Hinata cried only fueled the rage felt by Fu, Kurama, and especially Naruto. However, Hinata released a calming aura that allowed them to continue watching the scene comprehensively. In the vision, Hinata awoke in time to see her father coming to her rescue. The look in his eyes was one she couldn't remember. He seemed desperate to save her. The anger in his eyes was matched by the tears that threatened to fall. Once he had dispatched of the Kumo spy, he immediately went to Hinata and checked her for injuries. It was clear the man was terrified of losing his daughter, and seeing the memory so clearly for the first time since it happened, Hinata felt her heart tear to shreds. What happened? Where is this man, and who is the person who has claimed to be my father since then? She wondered as she looked at her younger self embrace Hiashi, and the man embrace back just as hard. It was such an alien sight that Hinata herself could only think that the memory itself had to be false. Afterward, they were only privy to hushed conversations that young Hinata was able to pick up on. However, it was clear that Hisashi Hyuga, Hiyashi's twin brother, sacrificed himself to Kumo in his brother's stead as compensation for unjustly killing a foreign dignitary. Naruto felt disgusted that Sarutobi gave in to the twisted demands of the Cloud Village. Not only did Hinata get traumatized by the event, but the Hyuga clan as a whole took a lose by simply protecting their heiress, and Kumo got away scot-free. The pit of rage that was born within the trio of outside observers made the memory fade in a red-hot flash. The rage made Hinata flinch as she took it all in at once. Her flinch made their anger subside once again, if only for the moment. Kurama was silent for a moment as Fu and Naruto attempted to calm the ex-Hyuga. If two of her siblings were in such a place, she worried about what their Jinchuriki were like. Fu and Naruto were one thing. They were still fairly young, well, to a degree. But if the others were grown adults, they could have already been weaponized or worse. She looked at Naruto and Fu and wondered would she really be able to save both the Biju and the Jinchuriki if the Jinchuriki themselves were enemies. The thought that she couldn't save them made her stomach drop. Not wanting to dwell on the worst case scenario, she shook her head and slapped her cheeks. "Hey. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it, Hinata-chan. Just know that we're here now and nothing like that will ever happen again. If Kumo wants to come take you, they'll need to get through all of us first." Naruto and Fu nodded, though Fu hadn't thought about the fact that she was a few hundred miles away. Hinata herself smiled at the Bijuu's words and wiped her tears. "Arigato, Kurama-chan." They took a few moments to return to the matter at hand. Turning their attention back to the desert biome, Kurama's worries from before made her falter. "Alright, so we need to make the seal appear, right?" Naruto asked, still optimistic. Hinata's tale and Kurama's emotions were hitting him harder than he would like to admit. He was hiding it, not realizing so was everyone else. "Yeah. Come on, let's give it a shot." Kurama began to change into her fell Bijuu form, swamping the area in her dense chakra. Fu stepped forward and channeled a little bit of Jime's chakra she knew how to access. Naruto and Hinata began to focus on the energy they used to kill Mizuki, and the small glow of their divine chakra overtook them, almost matching Kurama's. Fu was floored for a moment at the overwhelming power coming from the three next to her. "Holy shit, can I do that too?" she wondered. Her attention was brought back to the barrier as she felt all of their power begin to concentrate. She felt Kurama's chakra begin to try to match and then pull the barrier. She attempted to do the same, but was strained almost immediately. However, her strain didn't last long as all four were blasted away from the sandstorm barrier. Kurama landed on her feet, but the three ninja were sent crashing into trees, leaving small gashes and craters across the ground. She heard coughing from the building dust cloud and sensed that all three were alright. Naruto appeared first, waving the smoke from his face. Ugh, what the hell happened? He stumbled back towards Kurama as she began to shrink back into her humanoid form. Hinata and Fu stumbled out of the woods shortly after. Kurama growled in frustration, her fist clenched. What did you guys do? Hinata and Fu were confused at the girl's anger. Naruto rose an eyebrow. You said we needed to make the seal appear right. I hit it with everything I had. Kurama's jaw dropped in shock. What do you mean you hit it with everything you had? The anger in her voice wasn't missed by anyone. Now it was the blonde's turn to be confused by her anger. What are you getting upset about? You fucking idiot. You could have killed us. Or Shukaku and her Biju. We were trying to make the seal appear, not force our way in like a freaking battering ram. Naruto grew a tick mark and threw his hands up. Well, how the hell was I supposed to know that? Hinata and Kurama both came to the same realization. Hinata groaned in embarrassment while Kurama slumped to the ground in defeat. We can't do it, we can't do anything, Hinata groaned out. Naruto looked between the two with his own frustration growing. They were acting weird. What are you two on about? What can't we do? The young Kami sighed but moved towards her lover, gently taking his hands and placing a kiss on his lips to calm him. Naruto reciprocated, but the annoyed look on his face was cue that he still wanted answers. Naruto-kun, we don't know how to use our powers properly. Hell, we've only been shinobi for a day. We need experience. In lots of things. Tell me, how much do you know about sealing? At her words, Naruto finally understood why they failed. Shit, he muttered as Hinata wrapped her arms around him in comfort. Fu looked at the downtrodden trio with trepidation. This was another first. Seeing the group so defeated was not something she liked in the slightest. Hey, chin up guys. If your power is anything to go by, a little time out in the field and some studying will have you guys busting open this seal in no time. Though she tried to be the optimist, she immediately knew she wasn't very good at it. No one acknowledged her words, and she shrunk into herself at Kurama's just shut up glare. However, with their mood seeming to continuously nosedive, she didn't want to leave them in despair. Hey, I know I'm the new girl here and I didn't make such a good first impression. Not helping now either, Kurama growled out. Ignoring the jab, though it did hurt a bit, Fu continued. But, you can't lose faith. Look. I'm here. Kurama-sama, you were able to get to me with relative ease, right? Yeah, and I still don't completely understand why. Maybe the person who sealed Chimei and you was just an incompetent moron. Another flinch from the mint-haired Jinchuriki. She bit her tongue, not liking the fact that Kurama had unintentionally insulted Shibuki, Taki's village leader. Also one of the only people Fu gave a shit about. Regardless, she ground out. It's not impossible. If you guys work on your own abilities while Kurama-sama and Chimei-chan look into the seal here, we should be able to do something eventually. Kurama rolled her eyes. Eventually. Shukaku is suffering right now. Something you probably don't care about, right? She's probably just another monster or rodent to you. The spike of anger from Fu fractured the ground, shaking the mindscape. What the fuck is your problem? Kurama stood up with a serious glare. Though in her human form she was smaller than Fu, her aura still made her imposing. My problem is having to listen to a hypocrite like you. You were just like the rest of those fucked up humans just a few days ago, hating and shunning something you didn't understand. You probably only care about the oh so innocent human she sealed in, right? No care for the monster that had its freedom stolen and forcefully sealed against her will. Fu clenched her fist, though tears did enter her eyes. I already know I was ignorant, you don't need to throw that in my face. And what about you? You've been screaming this whole time about Shukaku this and Shukaku that. What about the Jinchuriki? Yeah, they could be like I was, or even worse. But now it sounds like you're discriminating against humans. What if he's just like Naruto? Now it was Kurama's turn to flinch. However, her shock only lasted for a moment as her aura grew and the world around them began to shake. Hey. Naruto stood and shouted, flooding the area in even more heat and pressure. Both of you knock it the fuck off right now. Fu and Kurama's anger didn't seem to subside. If anything, Naruto's interference seemed to make it grow. Both women seemed on the verge of exchanging blows. Their anger, in turn, made Naruto's grow. I said knock it the fuck off. His howl this time sent all others to the ground, violently jolting the realm around them. They all looked at the ex-Jinchuriki to see his eyes glowing golden like the sun. Hinata stood behind him, her hand on his back and her eyes a swirling mix of mist and flowers. Both of them were sweating as they unintentionally activated their sealed dijutsu for a moment. In the next, their eyes returned to normal and they dropped to their knees. A heavy silence fell between the group for several moments. Fu was the first to stand, her legs shaking from withstanding the aura around her. Sorry. Was all she said before disappearing from the mindscape. The pause in the air strangled the words from Kurama. She growled again and slammed a fist into the ground, shattering it in a 10-meter radius. Fuck. The Biju cried out, refusing to let the tears of frustration and regret fall. Naruto and Hinata looked at the Biju sadly. Sensing their emotions, she began to wipe her eyes before standing. "Please let me be alone for a while," she said before making her way back to the castle slowly. The divine duo wanted to comfort her, but were at a loss of how. With no other choice, the two also faded from the mindscape. The next morning came too soon for Naruto. He sat up in bed half an hour before his alarm was supposed to go off. His body ached for the first time in a while. He knew he was only really mentally fatigued from what happened within the mindscape. He decided to simply lay back until his alarm went off. He needed to think anyway. Something he was loath to say he wasn't really used to doing. First off, he knew neither Fu or Kurama were really in the wrong. While Fu was trying to support them, Kurama had the worst first meeting with her. Though they both seemed to be trying to change, with Fu trying to accept her Biju and her fate and Kurama trying to accept Fu herself, the tension from failing the seal most likely got to Kurama. Naruto groaned as he felt his stomach coil. Part of him realized it was partially his fault. He was too headstrong, like usual, and rushed into the situation without thinking. Though, everyone else held their fair share of the blame from the meltdown as well. He understood that though he had received the power of the Shinigami, he was still a freshly graduated genin. Even if his physical and spiritual energy was stronger, being able to apply it was something he'd need to train for. He also realized he had no clue exactly how strong he or Hinata actually were. They had very limited access to their divine energy, but had no clue how to use it. Sometimes it seemed as if it were connected to their emotions, while sometimes it seemed they could simply access it like chakra. Which also brought up the fact that Naruto had little knowledge when it came to being a ninja. After becoming a Shinigami, he realized his naivety in the academy would have sure cost him and his comrades their lives eventually. Hell, he was sure most of those that graduated probably shouldn't have. Now I understand why the test Kakashi is talking about has such a high failure rate. At least, for the people like me, he mused for a second, feeling depressed that he was too dumb to actually take his shinobi career seriously before the incident several days prior. But I have time, I hope. Me and Hinata-chan need to learn to be proper shinobi before we can become proper gods. With a heavy sigh, Naruto preemptively shut off the alarm just as it began to ring. He began to prepare for his first, and hopefully not last, day as a shinobi of Konoha. He wasn't surprised to see Sakura already there waiting, seeming to slightly doze as she leaned against a tree on the outskirts of the clearing. Wonder how long she's been here. He wouldn't have put it past the Pincat to have been there an hour early. As he made his way over, he took note of the 3 logs off to the side, just outside of the center of the clearing. He had a suspicious feeling about them. A little further and he could see a small river as well as a large stone that looked man-made. It seemed ornamental almost. Hey Naruto, Sakura yawned out as he approached. The blonde blushed a bit and had to admit that the girl was cute when she wasn't fawning over Sasuke or trying to turn his brain into liquid mush. "Sup Sakura-chan?" He called with a bit of mirth as he moved to the tree next to hers and leaned against it facing her. "Get a good sleep," he teased. The tired glare he got almost made him laugh. "Oh hardy har. I was too nervous to sleep. I got here 10 minutes ago, but only got like 2 hours of actual sleep." The blonde sighed and nodded. "Yeah, I was pretty much in the same boat. Actually woke up about an hour ago and just laid in bed for 30 minutes. She gave a hum of acknowledgement and yawned again. "Did you eat?" He nodded before reaching into his pouch and tossing her a small energy ration bar. She caught it but frowned. "Kakashi-sensei told us not to eat though." "Yeah, but if we're going to be doing something that's going to make us throw up, especially on limited sleep, I think it better to have something in the stomach for energy. Don't need to eat a 5-course meal or anything, but not eating anything at all is stupid." Once again Sakura was surprised by the thoughtfulness of Naruto. He was proving to be extremely different from the boy she thought she loathed in the academy. For a fact, this was probably the first time they had shared a conversation one-on-one that didn't start with him trying to go out with her and ending with her making his face meet the earth. It was more pleasant than she realized. Before she could dwell on it longer, a somewhat haggard-looking Sasuke entered the clearing. He took note of the two and was surprised when Naruto only nodded his direction, and Sakura gave a half-hearted smile before turning her attention to the ration bar in her hand. "What are you eating?" Sasuke asked when he was close enough, only somewhat sickened by the way the girl almost inhaled the bar. Sakura had the grace to blush at Sasuke's questioning look. "A ration that Naruto brought. I've got another if you want. Figured you two wouldn't eat anything." Sasuke scoffed, but his stomach growling a moment later was Naruto's answer. He gave a knowing smile as Sasuke blushed indignantly. "Kakashi-sensei told us." I know. But not having energy is going to make the test harder. Again, we're not eating a full course meal, so don't worry about throwing up or anything. And I'm sure you'll have enough time to digest it if his tardiness will be a repeating factor." Both his teammates paused at that. Sasuke took the ration without another thought while Sakura asked if he had any more. The trio consumed one more apiece before settling down for a bit of rest. It was calming when neither Sakura bugged Sasuke nor did Naruto bug either one of them. Naruto took a meditative stance again and began to think of all the things that had happened recently, though he avoided entering his mindscape. He was still lost on what to do about Fu and Kurama and wanted to give them both time to calm down. Sakura looked between the boys, noticing Sasuke with a contemplative look and Naruto once again meditating as he had done the day prior. She remembered what Naruto had said to her and Sasuke in the class, and she felt her stomach twist a bit. He said that I hate him and he doesn't want us to interact outside of missions and training at first. She would have agreed right away with his assessment and his words. However, another part of her sleepless night was realizing she didn't at all hate the blonde. In fact, she tossed and turned remembering all the nice things he had said to her that she had initially found annoying. She pushed all those thoughts away, especially when the thought that failing the test Kakashi had for them had more than a 50% chance failure rate. The previous night had been a jumbled mess for her, which ultimately led to her lack of sleep. I guess if we're going to be on a team together we should act cordial at the least. She remembered that Naruto had called her Sakura-chan when he greeted her a bit ago and didn't realize she began blushing. Maybe he came to that realization too. It would explain why he was willing to share his food with me and Sasuke-kun. Another glance at the meditating Genin and the Pinkat found more heat flowing to her cheeks. He's so different now. Was it all just an act in the academy? They do say deception is a ninja's greatest asset. Though as soon as she thought it, she shook that away. No way. Maybe he's just trying to be more mature. If that's the case, we all should try to make this work. Yeah. While Sakura found a new resolve to work with, Sasuke was recounting the nightmares from several hours ago. No matter how long it had been, at least once a month like clockwork, he would have the same vivid dream of the assassination of his family. Damn it Itachi, he growled and clenched his fist, but it went unnoticed by his teammates. Naruto felt a little of Sasuke's emotions but left it alone, knowing what he must have been thinking about. We'll need his head in the game for Kakashi-sensei, though hopefully the thought of gaining another step towards his ambition will keep him focused. It didn't take much longer for the Cycloptic Nin to arrive in a swirl of leaves. Yo. Sorry for being late. I got lost on the road to life. When his three Genin simply glared at him with bored looks, he sweat-dropped. They moved to stand before him side by side. Good morning sensei. They all called. Didn't you guys hear me? Kakashi asked, though the looks on his Genin faces didn't change. We're ready for the test Kakashi-sensei. Naruto answered stiffly. The silver-haired Jonin rubbed the back of his head awkwardly. Yeah, okay. Mentally, Naruto, Sasuke and Sakura were dancing in triumph at not acknowledging the man's bullshit. Kakashi pulled out two bells and showed the Genin. This test will be akin to the missions you may receive if you become full-fledged shinobi in Kunoichi. Your task will be to take these bells from me before the sun falls behind the horizon. Sakura cocked a head to the side cutely. Oh no, Kakashi-sensei, there are only two bells. Glad you noticed. He called with a tad bit too much mirth in his voice. That's because only two of you will get the bells and the last one of you will fail. What? Sakura and Naruto shouted, though Sasuke grit his teeth and tensed. Ah, there we go. Such cute reactions from the little Genin. Kakashi laughed in his head. Part of him had to wonder if he was letting Anko rub off him a bit too much. Naruto calmed down the fastest, however. After his outburst, he processed everything they had been told so far and immediately came to the conclusion of the test. He's trying to turn us against each other. Which means the true meaning behind the test is to not do that. I'm guessing he wants us to figure it out by working together so the test is teamwork, right? Because I've never heard of a two-man cell before. But that's not fair. Sakura cried. Kakashi's lone visible eye became dead serious, making the three Genin tense. He attached the bells to his hip opposite the side he held his Icha book before making eye contact with his students. Let me get one thing straight. You're aspiring shinobi in Kunoichi. I don't know exactly what you learned in the academy, but in the real world, that means nothing is fair. If an enemy decides to take your life, they won't care if they get a good fight out of it generally. Killing you and everyone you love will be their priority. His words made them shiver. He leaked Kai that affected Sakura and Sasuke. However, even while not being affected by the Kai, Naruto had to swallow at the tone and aura. Now, if you truly want to pass this test. If you truly want these bells. Come at me with the intent to kill. If you don't, maybe I'll make sure that you understand how pointless having half-assed thoughts like fairness is. At the end of his sentence, all three Genin disappeared. He was impressed that they understood his words were the beginning of the test. He was also impressed that they all seemed to hide themselves fairly well. While he could tell Sakura had hid under the brush just outside the clearing, most enemy ninja would overlook her if they weren't actively searching for someone. Sasuke had gone further and hid in the trees, as was taught to all Leaf Nin. The trees, shrubbery, and foliage was all their best friends. No Leaf Nin should ever lose a fight within a densely wooded area. Sasuke was deep within the leaves of a tree, and if it weren't for the initial rustle of when he entered, Kakashi would have lost sight of him. Naruto, however, was completely gone. Where did he go? He questioned half-heartedly as he scanned the area. I guess being a prankster has its advantages. No wonder he was able to evade our shinobi most of the time. His stealth is amazing. Kakashi found it weird to be complimenting the genin, especially Naruto. From reading his file and looking in on him from time to time, Kakashi had come to somewhat dislike the teen. He knew who his parents were and at first had wanted to be in the child's life. However, the thought of his previous team and sensei kept him far away. Eventually, seeing the boy be nothing like his father and having none of the skill of either of his parents, Kakashi simply saw the teen as a letdown. He stopped caring for the child, having the thought that Minato and Kushina would do the same. Was I wrong this whole time? He mused as he effectively could not find the boy. The Jonin wanted to talk with Naruto about how he knew of his parents. He wasn't completely convinced Naruto would have simply read about them and come to the conclusion of who they were. He was sure such information was definitely classified and the Hokage wouldn't have been so careless as to left such documents on his desk while the village pariah was present. However, he decided to have a heart a little. He was privy to the Mizuki incident and didn't want to grill the boy freshly off of his first kill. Before he could think any longer, kunai curved from the brush. The lazy nin pretended to be hit, substituting out at the last moment. Sakura ran into the clearing with a smile, thinking she had gotten him. Kakashi sighed from the tree he shunshined too. Never rush in without confirming anything. He thought as he saw the girl's face form into confusion and then horror at the kunai-riddled log. Guess it's time to have fun. On her end, Sakura quickly pulled out another kunai and took a ready stance as she looked around for her sensei. He escaped. I should have known he would see that coming. She was sweating, hoping that Sasuke was nearby and watching her back. She wondered where Naruto had gone off to as well. Hello, Sakura. Kakashi appeared behind the girl. Said Pinkette froze as she felt a cold metal press against the back of her neck. And you're dead. Want to try again? The girl swallowed and shook on the spot. The silver-haired nin sighed again, realizing she was too scared to do anything. As he prepared to knock her out, he instead had to jump away as more kunai embedded in the ground where he was standing. Snap out of it, Sakura-chan. Naruto shouted as he rushed in from the trees. Hearing her teammate's voice, Sakura looked around in confusion only to see Naruto brandish two kunai reverse-handed as he attacked their sensei. And Naruto. Go find Sasuke. We can't fight him alone. Naruto shouted over his shoulder. Sakura was surprised he came to her rescue and seeing the intense look on his face made the thoughts from earlier return. However, his words snapped her into action and she darted into the forest to look for their last teammate. Naruto. You said you guys can't fight me alone, but here you are doing just that. Kakashi dodged Naruto's strikes with relative ease, though he noted the speed and power of the strikes were no laughing matter. If Kakashi were another genin or maybe even a chunin, he would not have made it out of the flurry of steel unscathed. Oh please, I'm not stupid. I'm only here to distract. Besides, who said I'm Naruto? Kakashi was confused for only a moment before the clone began to glow. His eyes widened as he realized it was a clone. However, it didn't have the chakra signature one would expect from a shadow clone or the such. Even worse, as he was expecting an explosion, he tried to jump away. As the clone burst, instead of a fiery explosion, a massive gale of wind burst outward from where it had just been. Kakashi's backwards momentum was tripled from the wind and the Jonin was sent rocketing into the forest, smashing through several trees and slamming against a boulder, knocking the air from his lungs. The boulder cracked upon impact and dumped the Jonin onto the ground in pain. What the hell was that? He coughed and held his chest, wondering if anything were broken. After seeing the destruction before him, he would be surprised if nothing was. Trees lay broken into pieces in his trajectory and a clear scar ran across the earth. The area where Naruto's clone dispersed looked as if a concussive bomb had gone off in a 20-meter radius. Was that a wind elemental clone? When did he learn that? And how was it so powerful? Kakashi wondered. Now for a fact he knew he had underestimated the blonde. Plus, if he really was going to rally his team together, Kakashi might actually have his first passing team. Though part of him was proud, he still had a job to do. One good egg couldn't save them all after all. No matter how powerful he seemed to be.